It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Wow. Wow, I barely made it into the studio today again. I left early today, earlier than I normally do, because I get ready for the radio broadcast at home. I get ready for the TV show weeknights here at the office. And this is the Friday edition. It is the 10th day of August 2012. Wow, the election is just 3 months off, or even less than 3 months. August, September, October, it's in early November. It's just about 3 months. And I'm driving down 290 up by the Y, where they have Rex, and the truck police in Austin are now wearing Marine Corps drill sergeant hats, because they're the military and we're the civilians. We're the food here in this great new tyranny. And so I have to leave early because the checkpoints up there always shut the highway down here in the free country. And I see a drone bigger than Dallas flying at about 100 feet off the ground right down the highway at me. 150 feet maybe. And I thought, that's a drone moving a couple miles an hour, sitting about 125, 150 feet off the ground. So I pull over, get out, and there's a highway department contractor out there, and I got it landing, everything, got an interview with the guy, and it was pretty amazing. So we'll break it down coming up. He's got to grab it off my iPhone. I shot like 20 minutes. We've got to put it together. We'll have it for you by the third hour today. Now, I set this up a couple weeks ago when he was here for an hour, and it just went by so quick because I wanted to get your horror stories about homes being repossessed, people even fully owned. Dave Krieger was going to be with us for 2 hours. He's driving over here right now, listening on the radio, former news director in his own right, author. Dealing with the clouded titles, the takeover of society. But we're going to do about an hour and 20 minutes with him. He'll be all right. Maybe we'll do a more presentation on the nightly news, tape some more with him after that, because I've got to get into this drone thing and premiere the video and audio here on the radio coming up in about 2.5 hours from now. I mean, if it's done before then, we'll take a breakout and come back. But author of Clouded Titles, how to beat the banks when they try to steal your house. They're even taking houses again. People paid cash 10 years ago, 12 years ago. It's just amazing criminal organizations. We are run by a mafia. Big Sis, her, Kagan, and others, whatever their sexual preference is, it's pretty obvious. I don't attack people because of their sexual desires or whatever. That's not really my purview, but the fact is a lot of these groups end up bringing in their own people and then discriminate against others. And Big Sis, Drudge Report top story, it's from New York Post. It's also up at Infowars.com. Janet Napolitano treated the males like scum. Janet Napolitano run Homeland Security treated male staffers like lapdogs. Federal discrimination lawsuit charges. James Hayes Jr., who now in New York's top Homeland Security cop, claims Napolitano filled top spots in Washington, D.C. with two of her gal pals who were bent on tormenting male employees. Gee, you think so? I mean, that's why I've never really had a lot of problems with male police, and I'm not knocking female police officers. I'm sure there's some nice ones. But I've run into, they look like Janet Napolitano. They even have a little white wisp of hair, like it's the style or something, or like they're from Krypton, Superwoman, and they just go crazy. And I've been pulled over multiple times with my kids, and it's weirdo female cops on teams, and they start getting in my face and asking about the child seats and looking at me weird, and I just immediately start blowing up. I'm like, listen, you don't need to look at me all weird. If anybody's a criminal, it's you. I'm done playing games with people. So we're going to go over all of this. Got big economic news, guest insaneness, I got buzzed by a drone, and I got footage of it. Bigger than Dallas. Wait till you see this. Well, seeing is believing, and I have video footage of it that I shot about an hour ago, and then I got to go through the customary truck police checkpoint at a choke point in Austin, and barely got to the studio. So I went through the drone, and then I went through the highway checkpoint, and so I'm here in the great free country. But I actually talked to the drone operator. He was a nice fellow, and we're going to have that interview and the drone and everything. As I'm driving down the highway, 150 feet or so, there's a drone, and I pulled off and got footage and everything. We should have that for the radio/TV viewers by the 3rd hour. And Dave Krieger's coming in the next hour. We've got Syrian Girl, who last year has exposed that Al-Qaeda is attacking her country. She'll be joining us via video Skype. Now the media and the CFR are praising Al-Qaeda. I covered this a few days ago. In fact, will you guys reprint me the, I think it's Nemo's article, but he has the quotes and the link to the CFR. CFR, praises Al-Qaeda. I think that's the headline. Because I want to have those quotes so I can read those on air when we have them and show people the Council on Foreign Relations. I am supposedly anti-American because I do not support Al-Qaeda, who we're being told is so valiant. Even the London Guardian is how tough they are and how we're lucky to have them to get rid of Assad. I mean, Gaddafi goes and works with the West. They set him up, bring in jihadis, Al-Qaeda. I even had the guy that co-wrote the Patriot Games books and things with Tom Clancy, Dr. Pachinik, on a couple days ago. He's a guy that was arrested by Assad's dad and tried to bring down those governments. And he said it's probably wrong what's happening, putting Al-Qaeda in there. Probably wrong? I mean, this was amazing. And I know I harp on this and harp on this and harp on this. It's just so crazy to be trying to overthrow stable governments that are not attacking anybody. Yeah, here it is. CFR strategist praises Al-Qaeda bombings in Syria. Winston, we were never at war with Eurasia. That's a Paul Joseph Watson article. I think Kurt did one too, but thank you. Senior Counsel on Foreign Relations fellow Ed Hussein has hailed the presence of Al-Qaeda terrorists in Syria, praising their efforts, prowess on the CFR website in aid of SSA rebels, who they lead, while also lauding the increasing number of successful bombings carried out by Al-Qaeda fighters. We'll get to those quotes from the CFR minion coming up. And again, Big Sis says drones to be used for public safety. That means watching you. The drone I saw and folks we talked to were Highway Department. The problem is I interviewed Mr. Hurt, the head spokesman of the Highway Department, 17 years ago. That interview is on YouTube now. Mike Hansen, one of my old producers from the old TV show here locally, has put that back on the web. And I go up and I say, these cameras you're putting up all over town, you're going to use those to watch us. They're turned into the neighborhoods. And he goes, no, we're not. And I go, but the police are dual use. He goes, you ought to be a lawyer. You're absolutely right they are. So it's all this legalese. But we're going to be breaking down my little visit with a drone. Joseph Farah had his visit out on his real property. I've now had my little visit with a drone and the nice fellow that was operating it. People started pulling over and talking to us, listeners, and then the guy started getting a little bit freaked out. But he's a nice fellow, so he has nothing to worry about. But that is coming up in the 3rd hour today. They are downloading the video right now. And because it is video, I'm not going to subject everybody on the radio to 20 minutes of drone noises. What I'll do is just cut it down to some of the key things that the gentleman talked about and some of the things I talked about. But for radio listeners, you can also go to prisonplanet.tv. Prisonplanet.tv. It was a 15-day free trial we're running in perpetual motion, basically, for you to try it out. It's $5.95 a month. It supports the transmission, the TV side of what we're doing, the news gathering and broadcasting operations and transmitting operations. And we're getting the satellite uplinks and stuff. We're looking at that right now, finishing up some of the other studios for the other reporters that are coming in the next 2 months. The point is your support of prisonplanet.tv has really helped us get a lot of this done. And one membership for $5.95 with the same username and passcode, you can have 6 people logged on simultaneously, but don't use the username and passcode. As we note, you're going to share it. That's your bank username and passcode. Make a new one, something easy to remember, and, share it with a few of your friends and family. I mean, it's just, our goal is to get the information out. So it's really less than $1 a month per person. PrisonPlanet.tv, 15-day free trial, real news, real issues, live and on demand. And you've got stuff going back I've been doing on TV 17 years, but we've had PrisonPlanet.tv for 9+. And so there's 15 years of stuff there, but continually for 9+ years. All of it. Just an armory of information to defend our republic. It was funny. I was talking to the drone operator, and he's going, it's like a litmus test because he was getting all freaked out. So I was like, oh, I like your American flag hard hat. And I mean, here I am wearing camouflage jungle boots, a Beverly Hillbillies, Jethro-style picnic shirt and blue jeans, and I'm clean cut. But just because I'm asking the guy about the drone, he starts going, now, do you support the NRA? As a litmus test, I was like, yeah, I'm an NRA member. I think I'm a lifetime member. I think I sent him hundreds of bucks 20-something years ago to be a lifetime. I never really pay attention. I moved a few times, didn't change the dress right, don't get the magazine anymore. But we're the ones making the NRA do their job. Gun Owners of America, all the rest of it, are people making the NRA do their job. So, yes, we are pro-gun for the guy. He knew who I was, but he didn't really. He was like, I was like, they're weaponizing drones. He's like, well, that's a conspiracy theory. And I'm like, really? So when we put the video out today, we will show the news articles showing that. And again, my deal is I'm not against drones for highway department if they want to. Problem is it's always then used later to surveil us. So that's coming up. My little visit, Alex Jones. Joe Farah asked me when I was up there during Bilderberg in Virginia a few months ago from World Net Daily. He said, you ever been, buzzed by a drone? You ever seen one? I said, no, only on the news. Well, now I have. A week after I'm at his office, he lives in a rural area. It comes over his house, a police drone. So we're going to be talking. He said there's 5 of them operating in Austin just for the highway department right now. And the police department's getting them, and they got Texas police department's weaponizing them. So that's all coming up. And here's Big Sis. Big Sis, drones to be used for public safety. So we have a big broadcast lined up for you today. And again, this is New York Daily News. It's also in the New York Post. Homeland Security Secretary Napolitano favored women pals for jobs. No. We had a sheriff here in Austin that looked like her sister. I just don't know why these women all look exactly the same. I mean, it's a strange thing. And it became a big issue because I knew a lot of the sheriff's department people still do. I knew the SWAT team guys because I had a confrontation with them, and then they invited me over, and my videos were there and others, and they were like, we know what's going on. And they thought I was a kook, and then Delta Force visited them about secret police operations in town, and Lieutenant Beck spoke out about it, so they trumped up some reason to fire him. But I got to hear all about how all she would do was hire her gal pals. So, again, I mean, this is what happens. These little kingdoms get set up. So there you have it. And this is a senior person with this lawsuit. This is a big deal. A veteran U.S. law enforcement official has filed a blockbuster discrimination lawsuit against Homeland Security Secretary Janet Napolitano, also known as, what's the name of the person on Saturday Night Live? Pat. Pat's out of control up there. I'm sorry, I'm really bad. Charging she pushed him aside to make way for a less qualified woman who's enjoyed a long-standing relationship with the anti-terror chief. Oh, I bet she's had a relationship with her. Oh, man, I tell you. And again, nothing against these type of women, but I mean, does every Supreme Court job have to go to one? Does every law, I mean, just I have to like, and the thing is they hate men. I mean, I've run into the CPS quite a bit, and half of them are these women. The other half are pedophile men. That's why the CPS has about to say 50. Last time I saw it was over 60% turnover every year. Because normal people get in wanting to help kids. And they're like, you mean we drug them up and take them to pedophile factories? I'm quitting. It's just like TSA. They used to have a lot of good people there. They were after 9/11. They were just hired. They thought it was for security. They bought the hoax. But they all quit when it's like, now take a 3-year-old behind closed doors and take their underwear off. I mean, it's like, what? I mean, well, again, just hire Jerry Sandusky. They've been hiring all these pedophiles around the airports anyways. It's come out in the news. Defrock, priest, you name it. This is the hell we're going in here. A bunch of crazy people who were repressed or something when they were growing up, so they turn into perverts. Continuing, I mean, can you imagine having a job like Homeland Security had and all you hire is your special friends? Something based on something like that? Your special friends? Special friends, you know what I mean? And it just goes on. She's now been appointed by Mayor Bloomberg as commissioner, City Department of Correction. Yeah, maybe she'll go out and be a police chief in Colorado, and then magically something will happen like Bloomberg's other minion. The court papers also allege that Suzanne Barr, Napolitano's chief of staff, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, you know, the folks that legalize the illegals and order the IRS to give them fake ID so they can then attach them to real Social Security and rip people off and ruin their credit and have the IRS grab the citizens' bank accounts who've been set up. You mean stuff like that? Has engaged in numerous acts of sexually offensive behavior intended to humiliate and intimidate male employees. Yeah, that's what I've noticed in my life. And men do stuff too. I mean, men get attracted to women. They go after them in the workplace, and it's wrong. In fact, we've got a no fraternization thing going on here that I've got to enforce. But the point is that you ought to read this stuff. It's just that women use sex as the weapon. And you know, and then when men sit there and bite on it, it's a problem. But with this, it's the opposite. It's just a bunch of women up top laughing at the men, making fun of them all day as they walk around in their black knee-high jack boots with their bull whips. We'll be right back. Janet and her little love nest up there. Yeah, but that wasn't enough, was it? You had to rub the men's faces in it. What a nice group. These are nice women that wear shirts saying, I had an abortion. Imagine if you've had an abortion, that's one thing, but imagine, I had one and I liked it. It was fun. That'd be like saying, I love the time I chopped my finger off. It was fun. It's a bunch of lunatics who want the TSA to abuse your family and train them for pedophile abuse. Top psychologists have been on record saying it trains them for that. Boy, this is some sordid stuff about old Janet. Cousin It, or whatever her name is. It goes on as we break this down. A veteran U.S. law enforcement official has filed a blockbuster discrimination lawsuit against Homeland Security. Secretary Janet Napolitano, charging she pushed him aside to make way for a less qualified woman who was enjoying a long-standing relationship with the anti-terror chief. The woman, Dora Sherrero, I think I pronounced that right, was later appointed by Mayor Bloomberg as commissioner over the slaves of New York, I should add, the City Department of Correction. The dungeon pits. The court papers also allege that Suzanne Barr, Napolitano's chief of staff at Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the ones that engaged in treason and sedition and other criminal activities, raising our defenses, lowering the shields, has engaged in numerous acts of sexually offensive behavior intended to humiliate and intimidate male employees. Well, yeah, these women are like super males is what they're like. Barr's alleged act included calling one man in his hotel room and screaming at him that she wanted his bleeper. Oh, yeah, they really hate men's male organs for whatever reason. In the back, oh, my gosh, I can't even say this on air. The suit was filed by James T. Haynes, Jr., special agent in charge of New York investigations for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Hayes, who began, it just goes on, and I can't even read this on air. I can't even read this on air. I mean, these women, you know, it's like they say in Team America, it's not about sex, Gary. It's about power. And that's what these women are doing. This is how they're dominating everyone. And it is just thoroughly disgusting. But it also happens the other way. Men get into power and have special friends who they hire and put into all the positions. Not because they're qualified, not because they're the best of the job, but because, well, they go to the same clubs. We'll just leave it at that. And take showers in the same showers. And, well, you know. And, again, the issue here is I don't have hate for people out there. I don't like the fact that they have hate for me Because a lot of these groups, they put down the family. They say they want to get rid of it. They don't like the fact that, some men like women and some women like men. And some people like the Founding Fathers and the Second Amendment. And some of us never get tired of just, the way things have been for tens of thousands of years in human development. Some of us it fits, we like it. And we just don't want our school children in government brainwashing centers at age 5 being taught how to do things sexually I didn't learn about till college. How about you just keep your sexual mittens off our children's brains and don't try to corrupt them, you perverts? How about that? How about if you want to do that, you go straight to Hades? That'd be a nice place for you, wouldn't it? How about you keep your hands off the innocents? And how about you leave our country and our liberties alone? You can... I'm going to keep my money, I'm going to keep my guns, like, a famous country singer who's been persecuted for his free speech has said, Hank Williams Jr. I'm going to keep my money, my guns, my family, my shotgun, my rifle, my four-wheel drive. I do live back in the woods, you see. The woman, the kids, and the dogs, and me. And I do say grace. I do say amen. And if you don't like it, well, you know what I think about that. And so... you can keep all your change. I'll keep my prosperity. I'll keep my strength. I'll keep my honor. I'll keep the fact that I'm not backing down. Even if you kill me, I'll keep that. I'll keep my American heritage and my Texas heritage and my heritage of liberty. You keep all the rest of your garbage to yourselves. You understand that? And get out of my way. We're identifying you. We're rallying humanity against you. And we will defeat you. Because if God be with us, who can stand against us? All right, shifting gears to a very serious subject. I'm going to read some of these quotes here after we talk to our guest a little bit. CFR strategist last week praises al-Qaeda. Actually, this is just Tuesday, August 7th. But the CFR report came out last week. Paul Watson wrote about it on Tuesday. CFR strategist praises al-Qaeda bombings in Syria. This is from the Council on Foreign Relations, online publication. The Syrian rebels, the Rebels, would be immeasurably weaker today without al-Qaeda in their ranks. By and large, Free Syrian Army, FSA battalions are tired, divided, sounds like the criminal government, chaotic and ineffective, feeling abandoned by the West. You mean the bankers that have occupied the West. Rebel forces are increasingly demoralized as they square off with the Assad regime's superior weaponry and professional army, writes the senior fellow at the Eastern Studies with the CFR. Al-Qaeda fighters, however, may help improve morale. The influx of jihadists brings discipline, religious fervor, battle experience from Iraq, funding from Sunni sympathizers in the Gulf, and most importantly, deadly results, like 9/11. In short, the FSA needs Al-Qaeda now. And I read last week that London Guardian article where they're like, man, they are really tough. And they got nice black uniforms and they fly their flags, and the Guardian said Al-Qaeda leading the freedom fight and blowing up churches and synagogues. In fact, that was in the news yesterday. Blowing up, ethnic cleansing in Africa. They're in Libya lining up the blacks. It's their country, machine gunning tens of thousands. NATO landing 3,000 Al-Qaeda in Tripoli, blowing up the city. It's so loving. Of course, I'm here being sarcastic how sick this is. But joining us is a lady who goes bravely just by Syrian Girl. Her family, she's been with us before, I'm going to give you a brief bio, actually left because of political persecution under the Assad senior. Okay, so she comes from one of the big, high-up families in the country. Won't say where she lives, but she joins us via Skype. So this is somebody who didn't even like Assad, okay? I mean, that's like Steve Pachinik doesn't like Assad, was arrested by his father, tried to, basically overthrow those countries. Steve Pachinik, former head of the State Department Black Ops, said, yeah, this is wrong. And I can't believe I'm having to say Russia, I understand why Russia's trying to keep Assad in. Because they're blowing up and burning the churches and killing Alawite Muslims who are really Christians and killing a bunch of other, it is hellish. And if you're a Jew, and that's one of the oldest Jewish communities in the world, you're just dead. If you're a Christian, you'll probably be dead. Alawite, you're dead. And they are just blowing everything up. And it's just incredible. So Syrian Girl's been very brave. She's had the globalists, of course, attack her and demonize her because when you're over the target, you get flack. And everything she talked about here, I don't know, 8, 9 months ago has now been confirmed. Everything Tarpley, when he traveled there 6, 7, 8 months ago, was longer ago, and was in areas where Al-Qaeda, they kill people and then blame it on Assad. They blow up schools and blame it on Assad. I remember 6 months ago, our media would say events were done by Assad when they've now admitted it was Al-Qaeda. This is called peaceful protesting when you blow up a school or blow up a police department by these people, by the scum that runs our country. So joining us from an undisclosed location is Syrian Girl via video Skype. If radio listeners are tuning in, you can go to prisonplanet.tv to see the video. If not, we'll archive it later today for everybody for free. But good to have you here, Syrian Girl. Tell us, since we talked a few months ago, the breakdown from family you've got in Syria, what the latest intel is, because your intelligence you've given us has turned out to be absolutely on target.
Well, according to what sources on the ground, I think that, any sort of sympathy people had with the, as they call it, rebellions, it's really like a foreign-funded insurgency, is out, especially when the major cities have been attacked by outsiders. It's not like a ingrown sort of rebellion that's happening from inside the city. These people are coming from the outskirt towns, or they're coming from around the Middle East, and they're attacking the 2 major cities, which is Damascus and Aleppo. And people's lives have been disrupted. There's been bombings. There's been shooting on the street. My aunt was in hospital, and she was, in a very critical state. And at the same time, she had to deal with the fact that there was bombing just outside the hospital. So thank God that's over now, because the military has now secured Damascus, which is the capital city. And at the moment, the same thing is happening in Aleppo. The military is again just about to declare a victory in Aleppo. They're not quite there yet. But the insurgents, or the foreign mercenaries, there's so many names for them, they're inside the outskirt of Aleppo, which is the most populous city, but not the capital. And they're in a place called Salah ad-Din, which in Western language you'd probably understand more as Saladin. So, yes.
And bottom line, they're basically Sunni Wahhabist jihadis who just want to get rid of all the Muslim sects that are there. I mean, that's admitted. This is a Saudi Arabian, Western-backed, scorched earth extermination program being hailed by the Nobel Peace Prize winner as loving.
Well, you have the Wahhabis, this sort of, it's called the FSA, the Free Syrian Army, whatever. It's got many different factions, and some of them are so extreme. The Wahhabis, which are affiliated to Al-Qaeda, it's basically the same as Al-Qaeda. They hate everybody that isn't Wahhabi. They don't just hate Christians. They don't just hate Alawites. They also hate Sunnis, because to them, Sunnis are bad Muslims as well. So it's not just, Sunnis being the ones against the government, because actually the majority of Syria are Sunni. I come from a Sunni background, but we don't want anything to do with those sectarian, New World Order controlled puppets of the imperialists. So whilst you have like Wahhabis taking power, as The Guardian and the CFR said, inside the insurgency, there are some Muslim Brotherhood elements in there as well. And they're also controlled, of course, by Turkey, which is a Muslim Brotherhood country. And they're being supported by the new Muslim Brotherhood wave that's taken over under the auspices of the Arab Spring.
Let's talk about the massacres, the churches, the jihadis dressed up in Christian Orthodox robes, desecrating churches, killing people. It's now come out, confirmed what you said, I don't know, the first time you came on 7, 8, 9 months ago or longer, that they are doing fake newscasts. Syrian Danny, it did turn out they had people laying down like they were dead, fake burials. I mean, it's just amazing. And Anderson Cooper just plays along with it.
It's been a total media war. That's really what it's been. It's trying to create this illusion of all these horrors happening in Syria as undergone by the Syrian government. As you know, they killed like 200 children under the age of 5 just so that they can have this false flag Hula massacre, which in the end blew up in their face, because it turned out that even the German newspaper said that a lot of the families that were killed were actually either pro-government Sunnis that took part in the elections or Alawites. So, again, with the Christians, their churches were desecrated in Homs. I think the whole thing that's happening in Syria right now is to try to get the Christians out and turn them into refugees, because they want to basically remove all the secular countries inside the Middle East. Libya was secular. Iraq used to be secular. So it's now Syria's turn. You know, Syria is one of the last secular countries left. And so they want to just get the Christians out for whatever reason and just Islamitize the whole place. Maybe to have some kind of inter-religious war that, you know, destroys us all in the end.
Exactly. No, that's the stated Pentagon and Israeli plan, is balkanization, get the Shiites and Sunnis all killing each other. Wow, instead of, they would have just left Mohammed Mossadegh in 53, pro-America, secular, unifier, wanted to build up Iran. The whole place could just be glistening, tourist attractions with all the great beaches and everything. Instead, a crazy sect set up by British intelligence in Lawrence of Arabia was given control of what became Saudi Arabia, and now exports mass murder and death everywhere. So that, I mean, that's the policy here. Shut off our power plants, ship our jobs overseas, attack the family. The globalists want everyone on their knees and screwed up. And I mean, that's why they caught British intelligence. London Guardian, Associated Press, in Basra, dressed up like Wahhabist, running around shooting Shiites to get a war going, and it did. Just because you want to keep them fighting with each other as a pretext to be there at first, and then after that it got so out of hand they had to pay them off to quit killing each other. That was the so-called surge. It's just absolutely insane. Then they export radical Muslims into the West and use them to menace people so they can take all of our liberties, and then flip the script and now say that patriots who are anti-banker occupation, that we are the terrorist. I mean, it is just incredible to sit there and see the Council on Foreign Relations saying, we need al-Qaeda. What is it like for you to be ridiculed when you first started going public, what, over a year ago total? In fact, you probably know the dates. When did you first go public?
I think it was about, at most, 6 months ago.
Man, time has been flying. I think you did videos before 6 months ago.
Maybe you're right. I'm not very good with time.
Go to her YouTube site and see. I'm obsessed with this now. I think you've been doing videos for almost a year. But side issue, the point is, what is it like to now see them say, oh, there's no Al-Qaeda, that's not true. Or, okay, there is Al-Qaeda, we got to take over because they're there. And people are like, but you work, but I mean, you're running them, to, oh, Al-Qaeda is good. I mean, what is that like for you to sit there and watch that happen, and the fact you've been vindicated?
I'm kind of bemused, to be honest. I mean, I've known it for years. I know I've only been public for maybe a year, but before that, I've been following this thing, you know, since 10 years ago. So I know that they created Al-Qaeda. They created it in Afghanistan when they were trying to fight the Soviets. So yes, I've been vindicated, but unfortunately, people have not completely realized it. They are realizing it, but it's not across the board. You know, there's still people giving monies to NGOs like Amnesty International, and thinking that intervention in Syria in any form, even giving money to these so-called rebels, these insurgents, is a good thing. You know, people are still buying into it, and you know, it's amazing the goal of it. You know, it's so in your face. They love Al-Qaeda now. Yesterday they hated it. Before that they loved it. Yesterday they were the terrorists. Muslims were the terrorists. Today, you know, the veterans that fought, the American veterans that fought in the Middle East are now in America listed under the terror watch list. So it's just the way they work. You know, it's total opportunism. They do it because it gets them power. That's the whole idea. And maybe there's some ideological basis behind it as well. The powers that be, they have that crackpot religion that they want to install. So, and
just to be technical, you went public about 8 months ago. So it wasn't 6, it wasn't years, but it was about 8 months ago. Now, again, since then, this has all come out in the open, which the power structure did not want to be out in the open. In fact, Bilderberg in Switzerland a year and 3 months ago was very upset from our internal moles that it was in the LA Times that Al-Qaeda was being brought in by NATO, the U.S., and the Muslim Brotherhood out of eastern areas there in Egypt into the West in Libya. Now that was confirmed. They're very upset about this fact now because that shatters their whole paradigm. To break down how the battle's going, what is your best level analysis of where things are? I mean, is the Assad regime in more trouble than it was 6 months ago, or has it turned the tide? Now we're hearing about NATO maybe bombing with peace bombs again. Well,
what's happened now is, ever since the Homs battle in Bab Amr, that was very decisive, and it sort of that was a turning point. That was basically the Benghazi for the insurgency, the home base, and that was destroyed. So they no longer have that. So they are sort of discombobulated, and they did launch an offensive on Damascus, but they hold no ground. And every offensive they've launched against the city, they've been pushed back, and they're going to be pushed back again in Aleppo. So time and time again, the army has been victorious. And if it hasn't been, I would tell you that. I have no problem telling you exactly what's happening. But even if you listen to the analysts, Robert Fisk, anybody else, they will tell you the same thing. The insurgency is being defeated time and time again.
Exactly. So now they want to send in the Nobel Peace Bombs. In fact, I think they should start painting the Nobel Peace sign on, because, war is peace in this 1984. Al-Qaeda's our enemy. Now they're our friend. I mean, it's direct 1984. So expanding on this area, what do you expect them to do now? More cruise missiles they claim are suicide bombers right through the window of the Ministry of Defense, killing the chief folks?
Well, the thing is, about a no-fly zone, they can't do it. If they could do it, they would already have done it. But the thing that stops them is the Syrian air defense, which they now admit is one of the best in the world. We have very good surface-to-air missiles. But what they can do is even more dangerous. They can do the chemical weapons false flag that's been talked about.
I'm glad you brought that up. Get into that. That's even been in Israeli news, that Al-Qaeda has been given chemicals from Gaddafi's stockpile and all those missiles, and they're getting ready to blame Syrian government. Tell us about that.
Even if it weren't Gaddafi's stockpile, I've heard a journalist, Lizzie Fallon, tell me that actually the insurgents were, the rebels in Libya were given chemical weapons and did use them against other tribes in Libya. So they have been used before. So the idea is to give the chemical weapons, or maybe they have already given them the chemical weapons to the Syrian insurgents. I think they already have, because we see them all wearing gas masks now, and there's shipments of gas masks coming in. And to launch a chemical weapon attack, and then to accuse the Syrian government of doing it and take it to the Security Council. Because as things are now, because they can't do a no-fly zone, they'd like some other way to disarm Syria. They'd like something to hold over its head. And as we know what happened with Iraq, first of all, the UN came in and they made sure that Iraq couldn't defend itself. They made sure that Iraq doesn't have chemical weapons. And then the US attacked. So that's the same narrative over and over again.
By the way, Syrian Girl, I told the guys on Monday I wanted to get you on, and I'd forgotten why I wanted to get you on when I saw you on the list today. I mean, I wanted a general report. That's why I wanted you on, is because you've been breaking down, and I went and looked up the articles you showed. It's even in Israeli news that Al-Qaeda is getting chemical weapons, and it may be a false flag. I mean, that's amazing. And then that's how they'll bring NATO in, saying, look at that dirty Assad. He used chemical weapons on his poor people. Amazing. Would be another big war crime by the globalist. We're going to keep Syrian Girl with us for 5 minutes of the next hour, and then we're going to get into the fact that big offshore mega banks have sold the mortgages over and over again. In some cases, sold mortgages they never even owned or had. And the courts are so corrupt, a lot of times they'll just give you their house. They go, well, you're a big mega bank. You don't have a deed. These people have a deed. They paid for it with cash 27 years ago. SWAT team attack. It's just take it. But sometimes courts are actually ruling against the big banks. So we're going to break down the book, Clouded Titles. It's available at Infowars.com, InfowarsShop.com. Discounted, by the way, and you also get a free citizen rule book with it. And this is real strategies, because works as a paralegal. He's a former big news director, award-winning radio, talk show host, TV, you name it. But Dave has gone off and written this book. And I've had a lot of the lawyers that are in his book on the show, that you see in USA Today and stuff, winning lawsuits against these big 6 mega banks that are stealing houses. But people are going to jail that are filing fake patriot mythology stuff. Okay? You know, declaring I'm not a citizen of the UN captured territory of the realm, and then they go to jail. We're going to talk about patriot mythology here, because I don't want to see you go to jail. I want you to get a tool that really kicks the hind end of the globalist, because we want to win here, okay? And when I say patriot, I'm a patriot. I love, and there's a lot of real law and a lot of real pro se out there. There's also a lot of bull, a lot of hokum, a lot of poppycock, a lot of boulder dash, a lot of really scrambled baloney. Now, Syrian Girl, we're going to continue to the next segment on this. It's so important here today. The spectacle that in the last 2 weeks they've been hyping that Assad's going to use chemical weapons, and then admitting that, and suddenly you see al-Qaeda people running around with a gas mask, and even Debka files saying the word is al-Qaeda's got chemical weapons out of Libya and all those missiles they got. What's going to happen now with thousands of heat-seeking missiles, over 2,000 alone are heat-seeking and radar-guided, 10,000 plus of just general anti-aircraft missiles they got in Libya, and now our friend al-Qaeda, we're told, is going to have these? I mean, but how is sticking their hands down my pants at the airport going to save me, Syrian Girl, from their loving al-Qaeda?
Well, they do have anti-air now. We've got pictures of them with the Strela, two surface-to-air heat-seeking, take it wherever you go missiles. So it's already in their hands. They haven't been able to get the experience to use it appropriately. And, it's not going to save you. This whole thing is going to destroy us all, because the only way this can end is in a war. And it might be a regional war. If you're lucky, it might be a world war. It might be a nuclear world war, because you have Russia and China not backing down, and you have NATO and the GCC countries and Israel not backing down. So, if they don't pull back, this is how it's going to end, because Syria can't continue like this for years and years. Eventually something's going to break. Someone's going to move in. Someone's going to cross that line, and when that happens, it's going to be all over, really.
Do you want to apologize for being unpatriotic and not wanting al-Qaeda to murder and burn and kill hundreds of thousands of people? Syrian Girl, do you want to apologize that in the last 8 months you fought against this here on air? Do you want to support al-Qaeda like our president does? Do you want to pledge allegiance?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I do not want to support al-Qaeda or anything. And
so you're not pledging allegiance like our government has to al-Qaeda? Okay. I apologize for having an extremist on. Hold on. We are now into our number 2 worldwide transmission. All right, Syrian Girl, reporting from an undisclosed location. Everything you've talked about the last 8 months has turned out to be accurate. The Russians are talking about Third World War. A lot of analysts are. You've got the floor for the last 5 minutes of this portion of the interview to break down other facets.
Thank you very much. I did have the urge to say that you're a patriot and I'm a patriot, so we understand each other. We don't want enemies. We just want to live the way we want to live independently and have safety in our land. And what Syria is facing at the moment, you can say whatever you want about each side. Every side might have a sad story. That's absolutely true. But at the end of the day, Syria is facing a foreign attack by foreigners, and everybody who loves their country, who wants it to be secure, would oppose that in their own nation. And the fact is that we're both dealing with traitors. You have traitors in your government. We have traitors not just outside our government, but inside our government too. Corruption is a form of treason. So at the end of the day, you have people defecting. They're being bought. This is in Syria. They're being bought by the UK, which has pledged now another £5 million to go to try to fuel the war in Syria. And you have also the US pledging money. You have Qatar pledging money. And if this was a grassroots movement, why would it need so many fighters and so many weapons and so much money from foreigners, not Syrian people? I've seen revolutions happen without such things, grassroots, where millions of people have striked and said what they wanted. But that's not what's happening in Syria. And globally speaking, Syria is not a country that is a New World Order country. We do not ascribe to them. And so they call us a rogue state. And they want to push us to be in line with everybody else. And this is what this is all about. When they want their regional global war to happen, they want to be able to control both sides. And Al-Qaeda is about controlling the side of the Muslims. And if they can get all the Muslims to be under the banner of Al-Qaeda, just like they tried to get the Iraqi resistance in Iraq to be under the banner of Al-Qaeda, though they didn't succeed, then they can control both sides of the war. And they can keep it going on and on and on. So I think that's really what I wanted to say. You know, we're all fighting the same creature, and I hope that, you know, we will be victorious.
Well, Syrian Girl, you're right. How can people check out your Twitter, Facebook, YouTube channels? Give out that contact info for people that want to learn more about your reporting.
My YouTube is Syrian Girl Partisan, and Partisan is with an S, and there's no spaces. And Partisan Girl is my Twitter, and Partisan Girl is my Facebook as well. So if you find any one of them, you'll find the other ones.
Well, charging up Al-Qaeda and giving them all this power is incredibly dangerous. And our media thinks we're so stupid. In a year, they'll be saying we've got to go into Syria because Al-Qaeda runs it. And Al-Qaeda blew up this, blew up that, so we've got to surveil the American people. It's incredibly transparent. And if our criminal government would run Al-Qaeda, they would run the mass shootings. And they have. If they would run Fast and Furious, they could do anything. And they have. And this is not our government. This is the globalists doing this. They hate the Syrians. They hate the American people. They hate all national sovereignty. And Assad has been a lot better than his father, probably one of the best stabilizing forces there. Gaddafi been working with the West. They set him up to put Al-Qaeda in and just to engage incredible crimes. And your family are political, I guess, refugees of Syria. You're not Assad fans. It's so bad, you've got to fight Al-Qaeda. You've got to be against the West. Bringing in jihadis that were on the BBC in Libya with signs saying, "Here we come, Syria." 6 to 8 months ago. I mean, incredible. Syrian Girl, thank you so much for your courage. We'll talk to you again soon on the Nightly News. We'll be back with a guest in studio. I'm Alex Jones. Well, ladies and gentlemen, for the next hour and 20 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by the author of Clouded Titles, one of the biggest stories out there. Dave Krieger is going to be here with us in just a moment. In fact, he is here with us right now. You just joined us. It is Friday, the 10th day of August, 2012. I am your host, Alex Jones. I'm here Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 3 Eastern, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central, and so on. That'd be 10 to 1 Mountain, 9 to noon Pacific. And then I come back Sundays, 4 to 6 Central, live, 4 to 6 Central with the Sunday transmission. Because so much news and information breaks over the weekend that we need to be on the air on Sundays. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Hard to believe I've been doing the Sunday show now for about 6 years. Time just flies. Seems like yesterday I started out on Access TV 17 years ago. And almost immediately got a local radio show and then got syndicated a few years ago, I guess in 1998. Just amazing. 14 years. And here the show is just growing and growing because people would hear the show and think it was really radical in the past. And now they've seen so much of it come true. I was like, oh, Alex Jones says they've got plans to use troops on the American people. Now they're rolling it out on the streets of America. U.S. Army tactical manuals describe how to control domestic insurrection. Yeah, the Tea Party is who they say. And they believe Al-Qaeda will link up in the Army training manuals and the War College documents. This is public. They publicly publish this. The Tea Party is going to link up, wait for it, with Al-Qaeda. I mean, the Tea Party on average is the most Islamophobic group you could imagine. It's amazing how dumb they think we are. Meanwhile, the Pentagon, the globalists run Al-Qaeda and admit it in the news. And the CFR said, quote, "We need Al-Qaeda." Oh, well, I will not pledge allegiance to Al-Qaeda. So call me anti-American if you want, because in the new America, we have reached 1984. Al-Qaeda is evil and hiding under every table, so TSA has to molest your children and fondle your wife and you. But at the same time, Al-Qaeda are heroes in Libya and Syria, but they're bad and going to link up with the Tea Party. Anyone that believes that, if you're a new listener, by the way, that came out was all over mainstream news just this week. We reported on it, others did. The report of Army training to take on Tea Party insurrection. Just type that in, you'll get mainstream news on it, not just us. They actually in the mainstream news were like, maybe we should get ready for them. And they say we could link up with Al-Qaeda. So, sure. Well, I'm not linking up with Al-Qaeda. I mean, I'm not NATO or the Pentagon. I didn't create Al-Qaeda like the Pentagon did. I didn't use them against the Russians or against the Serbs or against everybody else. I didn't use them against the United States so they could take our liberties here domestically. I've interviewed the head of the U.S. Embassy who was ordered to give them waivers to get them into the United States and was told they're CIA agents. And then the head of the Defense Language School, Colonel Butler, went out and said, Muhammad Atta trained at our base. Something's going on. The government's involved. They began a court-martial on him until he shut up, and then he's like on the witness protection program or something. They don't want you to. And then another guy who saw them putting bombs in the buildings, well, they told him bombs in the buildings. He died a few weeks after coming on the show. That was Barry Jennings, the deputy head of New York Emergency Management in Building 7. You know, I just think we got some pretty bad people running things. You know, the type that ship 20,000 guns and hand grenades into Mexico to blame the Second Amendment. So that's some of the news up there. And a carbon agenda set stage for rolling blackouts in California, back to the old Enron scams, cut off the power so they can charge you more. They found that creates the perception of scarcity. That came out in the Enron documents, and 12 years later, they're back. They're back. Surveillance cameras turned off during Sikh temple shooting. But the Attorney General is there right now at services, feeding off of it. A guy who said, as Deputy Attorney General, he wants to ban the Second Amendment. Massive IRS fraud scheme allows illegals to grab billions. I told you about this last week before it broke. I never got our story out. But it's a lot bigger than just giving them fake IDs. They're then allowed to take other people's Social Security numbers, merge the two, even though they don't match. And the system is then prosecuting or going after or shutting down the bank accounts of the citizen who they enable the illegal to take your identity. I mean, man, that is, you never can underestimate the banker occupiers and how they want to destroy this country. $22 billion to ship General Motors to China. Buy those Cadillacs made in China. So a cop strip search mom forcibly. Now, this is out of the Broward Palm Beach New Times, but I can't even really say this on air. It was that the woman was that time of the month, and they pulled the feminine product out of her body, and are very proud of their activities. And so the TSA is leading the way now, because they now do that. They take women in private areas and make them remove things, colostomy bags. Old ladies are forced to stand, and then they make other slaves pick them up if they can't stand. It's all part of our humiliation. 11 things that can happen when you allow your country to become enslaved to bankers. That's all up at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. And then, in the last 20 minutes of the show today, after our guest leaves us, I promised to have him back to take calls, we are going to premiere, because I got like 20 minutes of footage of this. They're back there grabbing it off my cell phone. It takes a while to encode it for whatever reason. They're cutting it down to like 7-8 minutes. We're going to play a drone. I got droned today driving in from up 290 into Austin. And then there was a big traffic backup because of a wreck and the truck police checkpoint, so I barely made it here. I may have to just move back into town because the new checkpoints and it's such a free country. I tell you, it's so free. I mean, I got up close, folks. I'm driving. I go, that's a drone right over the road. So that is coming up. We're going to break that down. But for the next hour and 20 minutes, as I said, we are joined by a guy we've had on the radio a few weeks ago on the nightly news, and backed by popular demand. Dave Krieger is a former major market radio news reporter, right here at News Radio 590 AM, where we're on. News director, television news reporter, anchorman, and investigative journalist who has won national and state news awards from Associated Press broadcasters. Dave was a former member of Radio Television News Directors Association. He began studying law in the early 1990s. He just found out about all this fraud with the titles and everything, and so got into that. He's been working with some big law firms that have been in national news. That's how I found out about him beating the big banks. And so he now has been putting on these big paralegal events where lawyers come to learn from him. And his newest incarnation of his book, Clouded Titles, is 396 pages, the latest with court cases that are winning, strategies that will win, not get you put in prison. So very, very exciting. Lawyers are buying these by the case, and so are the lawyers are handing them out to their clients. And it's for sale at Infowarshop.com or 888-253-3139. And we have it discounted, I think, about $10 off the regular price at Infowarshop.com is the lowest price anywhere. We're evil capitalists here. So be sure and check it out at Infowarshop.com. I just want to say, though, Dave, you didn't build this. You didn't write this book. You didn't go to all the seminars. You didn't go interview all the lawyers. You haven't worked for many years at law firm up in Dallas fighting this. You have done nothing. Would you like to thank Obama for writing your book?
Of course I would.
Good. Would you like to, in fact, would you like to thank government for giving birth to you?
Actually, the government, yeah, you got to love that. The government actually helped me out a lot. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the government and all the shenanigans that have been going on with the big banks and these issues that we're finding out now with Eric Holder and Lanny Brewer and the Justice Department ties, we now have a new white paper.
That's right. They did this too, so they did build it, actually.
We have a new white paper that's out now by the Government Accountability Institute that actually has gone into detail and is working a working model, 27 pages long, that goes into detail about the MERS, Eric Holder, Lanny Brewer, DOJ, SEC connection.
Okay, well, let's explain most of the listeners understand this, but we got millions of listeners, so there's probably 300,000, 400,000 people listening for the first time right now. So give it in just a few minutes because skip the break as I'm late. I need to stop doing this. I'm out of control. You know, we can't skip the break. Give us just a breakdown of what is happening, the history of this, and then give us the latest on the loving DOJ.
Oh, well, the basis for writing the book was the fact that I started to see a pattern in 2006. I got out of my last mortgage in August of, or October rather, of 2006, right before it was going to reset itself. It was one of those adjustable rate mortgages. Basically what was happening is in 2003, when this whole nonsense started, the promotion had been that everybody needed to, and you know, this is part of the brain game where they put this idea in your head that you need to own a house, and it doesn't matter, you know, whether you have a job or not. That's why they have ninja loans, which is no job, no income, no assets. And they now have that for cars and everywhere else. Exactly, and you just tell us how much money you want to make, and we'll put it down, and we'll get you a loan for that. And they've got these programs out there that are all tied to the securitization market, and they use a vehicle called mortgage electronic registration.
And then they tie these packages of total crud and get government to invest your pension and everything else in, and then holds you hostage.
Exactly, and then you find out your 401k's been depleted, and they're paying you back at 10 cents on the dollar after you sue them. So in essence, that's how this.
But they don't care because they got the fees swapping all the derivatives crud.
$50 trillion.
Plus the SWAT team standing by if you don't like it.
Yeah, it's $50 trillion they made off derivatives.
By the way, you don't add in here, you're a Vietnam veteran, combat veteran. Well, what is it like for you to see the country become this corrupt?
Well, you know, from a Vietnam vet's point of view, it's sad that we have to see all of this stuff that we're over there. I mean, first off, most of the vets in Vietnam didn't even know why they were there. And most of the stuff I was involved in was involved with Army Security Agency, so I don't talk about that. So it's just one of these things where, you know, as far as combat goes, you know, we didn't see a lot of that. We were more behind the scenes. You were more advisory capacity.
More of an Air America capacity?
You got to love that. You run away with that one.
Loving government, huh?
Got to love it. Yeah, Air America, Black Ops, all the other good stuff. You know, we know that there was a certain amount of that going on, but, you know,
it's a very loving government.
Here to there, you know.
It's a very loving government.
Yeah. The bigger problem we have now is trying to...
I had some family in Army security. You know what they did?
What's
in the U.S.?
IMERS.
Well, I've said it on air before. I'm not going to get into it. Anyways, all right, we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Stay with us. We're going to break down the loving foreign banks taking over the country through derivatives fraud and how to stop them. Dave Krieger is in studio with us, and then after he leaves us in about an hour from now, we're going to go to phones here in about 20 minutes for your questions, your horror stories. We will get into my little run-in with a drone today, and I have video of it. So we're going to air the audio of that and the video here on the radio. Obviously, the video works better, but there's an interview, too, coming up in about an hour. Here it is. Deed, who really owns your home? Over 700,000, or is that 70 million?
70 million.
Has 70 million titles. I can read that. It's so big. To property or clouded. Is yours one of them? This book could help you find out and fix it. In fact, I use information similar to this book to make sure with my house that I had that. And it goes on to break it all down. Clouded titles, new updated edition with case studies and sites. And Dave Krieger is our guest. It's available at InfowarsShop.com. As I was saying, invaluable book to have. Okay, Dave, This is a short segment, long segment coming up. Break down how the scam worked, what happened, what Mirrors is, and then let's get into the usual suspect. I mean, it seems like everything. The Attorney General's involved in it, even back during Clinton with his law firm, when he was Deputy Attorney General, getting all this changed, where this is going. And then let's get into the Patriot mythology, getting a lot of people in trouble versus real stuff that's in your book. And then let's take phone calls.
Sure. Well, Alex, the thing started in 1995. It was a concept of how can we basically control and track and transfer these mortgage notes on Wall Street. And so Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, the Mortgage Bankers Association, American Land Title Association, and all the major banks got together and came up with a game plan, and they got Covington and Burling, a law firm in Washington, D.C., to issue an opinion letter. And basically what it did was it gave what we call Mortgage Electronic Registration Systems, or MERS, credence to do what it's doing in America. And what, in essence, happens is that when you go to the closing table and you sign this piece of paper, which represents a mortgage or deed of trust, there's an 18-digit MIN number, or MERS identification number, that is the property of MERS Corp Holdings, Inc., that appears near the document title. And the things that we've been trying to do is to get people to recognize this, which is one of the fundamental reasons I wrote the book, because, you know, if you knew what the consequences were of getting a MERS loan or MERS mortgage, MERS doesn't have anything to do with the actual mortgage note itself. MERS actually only is a computer database that, for all intents and purposes, tracks the sales of these repetitively as they occur on Wall Street between the parties. The unfortunate thing about MERS, which it admits, by the way, is that it is not a substitute for the land records. All it is an electronic database that is used by its membership subscribers, which is kind of like the credit bureaus. If you ever wonder who inputs the data on the credit reports, well, this is all these member subscribers of the credit bureaus that have access to this information. And the credit bureau is entrusted through the Fair Credit Reporting Act to basically keep track and make sure that everything that's being reported is accurate, which is why we have the dispute process. You know, to look at it, just the opposite, MERS does not have this kind of government regulation, as do the banks. So it's not a real deed registration. They created it so they could run these scams and sell the deeds over and over again. Well, they sell the mortgage notes over and over again. Exactly. So how many times? Exactly. But I mean, it's the same. I mean, the same thing in the final equation, though, isn't it? Well, actually, no. Your mortgage note, it was really sad to hear that. I mean, I know they're two different things, but they come back to court and try to take your house with it. Exactly. Well, they try to come with part of the equation, not all of it. And this is one of the things that the attorneys who are studying this stuff and they're sharing this information with me are telling me, is that they're trying to get the entire equation put together and do it in such a way that the judge will believe it, because right now... So they're engaged in perjury and fraud, and constructive fraud. But the issue here is that for years now, they're getting their clocks cleaned in courts all over the place. And that's what you break down in your book. A lot of them have been. We've had a few significant cases where the homeowners have won. And we just had a RICO-style action happen down in the Gulf Coast of Florida. We have an appellate attorney down there in Englewood that actually won a case. It's Elizabeth Corson, and you know, it's been circulating around the internet. And I'm sure if you type in Corson, C-O-U-R-S-E-N, you'll see that case. We actually defeated a motion to dismiss there on the appellate level. Basically, we reversed it. So, you know, we're having a few victories, and then, of course, we have some of the sad consequences of what happens to people when they go in and they try and fight this thing on their own, and they file documents in the land records that are not appropriate. And as I was sharing with you before we went on the air, Alex, this woman in California filed a document in the land records in an attempt to stop a foreclosure of her parents' home. And now she was convicted of 2 felony counts and sentenced to a year in jail. Yeah, stay there. We're going to come back and break that down, because there are people out there on the internet that will tell you to do stuff like this. This is the power of common law. You're filing and swearing to something, and let me tell you, it's fraud if it's not true. Now, the banks are doing it, but just because they're engaged in fraud doesn't mean we now run to beat them and engage in fraud. So we're going to break down the right way to do it versus the wrong way, and take your phone calls. Stay with us. And Dave Krieger is our guest in studio. You have literally hundreds of trillions of dollars worldwide by the Chinese government, Russian government, European governments, pension funds,
And this is also done in Europe to some extent. It's not as bad as here, but some countries even worse from what I've read, to where it's all just fraudulent. I remember they make you put money in escrow to pay your property taxes. The first house, like 14 years ago, I moved into. It was a little bitty house, and I had put my money in, and about a year later, I was told your mortgage has been sold 2 or 3 times. It's finally Bank of America. Every few months, it was a new place to, back then it was actually send a check in. And then they said, you don't have $3,000 or whatever it was in escrow, and I went and checked the records. We did. They'd taken the money, and they were letting me know they were starting proceedings to take the house that I'd put money down on and been paying on for a year and a half or so. And I had to go get a lawyer and send them a letter and threaten Bank of America. But imagine old ladies or people that don't know what they're doing. And I'm certainly no rocket scientist, especially 14 years ago. I've learned a lot since then. But you see the cases on the news. I mean, we've played these here for like CNN, where they took in Florida a $1.2 million house that had been paid for a decade plus before with cash, never had a securitized note that had been sold out in the market. Explain this to people, and let's get in, as you were, to the patriot mythology. Some of the stuff where declare yourself a sovereign of the realm of the Lord and file it, and then they'll just come arrest you. Because that's no different than what the bankers are doing. If they're engaged in fraud, you don't go file something else. You need to get this book, folks, because this has got a bunch of the cases that have actually succeeded. And there's different types of fraud going on. But please continue, Dave.
Alex, stuff changes all the time. And the scenario sometimes gets very ugly. We see cases like the one in Stanislaus County, California, where the woman is trying to protect her parents' house. It's in the final stages of foreclosure. And, these well-meaning souls out there, I call them patriot paralegals, type up these documents thinking that they can use the UCC, common law, and basically they move outside of the system's tools to attempt to enforce their way on the system.
And the system immediately recognizes that it's not within, kosher systems. Exactly,
and this is what causes the problems. And as a result of her filing these documents in Stanislaus County, the district attorney had her prosecuted. We've had numerous instances that I've run across in the state of Texas, where somebody has gone in and written and filed affidavits after the trustee's deed. The property was foreclosed on, it was sold, the trustee's deed was filed, and so instead of fighting it at the detainer hearing, which would be the next thing, let's kick you out of your house, and so we have to go do what we call a forcible detainer hearing. And what ends up happening is this particular person files a whole series of documents, starting with an affidavit, rescinding everything that's already been foreclosed on. Well, it's a little late for that. And when she went to the county clerk to record it, there was somebody who didn't even work in the clerk's office that looked at the documentation and said, I don't think I'd file that stuff if I were you. She went ahead and did it anyway. And when I got to looking at it, I was just like scratching my head going, this is paralleling the case in Stanislaus County. A judge literally could throw the...
Well, I mean, there are a bunch of scammers. I know a bunch of patriot paralegals who are winning in court and are having success, but they're following cases that have won. They're following, systems that are there. So there is success there as well, but there's a bunch of lawyers. I mean, I've seen countless cases now that are having victories. The point is, you want to go with real instruments that point out the fraud the bankers are engaged in. Don't counter their fraud with your own made-up garbage.
Well, look at the county land records as a sacred vault of documents that basically represent a person's chain of title from the time they took possession of it and were given a warranty deed all the way up to the current state and condition of title. And through these chain of title assessment seminars and stuff that I do, I teach people to go in and analyze step by step from the warranty deed forward to see how many times the chain of title has been affected. One of the things we're seeing is the more you go out and borrow and refi and get a HELOC and refi, the worse condition the chain of title becomes, because you have more outside third parties interfering in the chain and filing documents that appear to be legitimate when they're anything but.
Well, let me ask you this. How bad does it get? Because I've had different economists and experts and lawyers on, some of the lawyers that have won in court that you mentioned in your book, and they talk about how many times in derivatives these securitized loans are being sold and the fraud that these groups are holding. How many times are they selling these titles on average?
Well, the notes are basically on Wall Street, Alex, are being taken and spun over anywhere from 9 to 30 times, maybe more. We don't know, because they're hidden in the MERS system. The MERS electronic database keeps track of all the transfers, but none of these are recorded in the land records, and this is what's causing the problems with the 70 change of title.
And they come take houses in some cases, not just where you're behind and then they fraudulently do it, where they just take houses that they never even had anything to.
Well, it could have been because of the fact that when they and I was talking to a title guy in Cleveland yesterday, and he told me that we see a lot of problems and mistakes that were done because somebody who was preparing the warranty deed put the wrong legal description on, and they basically, when they filed the warranty deed, all of a sudden it looked like that there could be a potential slander of someone else's title. And so when you're looking at a legal description that all of a sudden should say lot 6, block 7, but it says, because of the fact that, you know, they were having a bad day and looked cross-eyed at the computer, didn't have enough coffee, and hit lot 7, block 7, all of a sudden, now we have a lien on the wrong property. And this is where you see a lot of this back.
Oh, yeah, I saw cases, speaking in California, in L.A., they're now having thousands of cases a year of innocent people being arrested because they just put your name in a bank robber or a child molester's area, and now your life's ruined. And it's so, it's so Byzantine that no one can fix it.
It's going to take at least a century to fix this problem if we can stop MERS now. And I do know that there is a movement afoot by many legislatures to try to cut the MERS equation out of the recordation process in
But then what does that do to all the derivatives based on it worldwide?
Well, the derivatives generally don't have anything to do with what's in the land records. They're two distinct entities. But, I mean, you literally could go out if you wanted to, if it was available. You literally could bet against the weather. You could say, well, you know what? I know that it's going to rain tomorrow, but I'm going to bet against the fact it's going to rain, bet that it's going to be sunny, so that when it comes to find out that it's not sunny, I'm going to collect. I'm going to go in and I'm going to collect on that bet. This is kind of what they did when they structured these loans.
No, I know, but I mean, if MERS goes under, they'll lose even more of the cases. My point is, all this fraud is based on this fraudulent filing system. So, and from what I've read, the big banks are still doing this.
Yes, they are, and this is a thing that we have to, you know, the only thing I could do because I can't give you legal advice. I'm a paralegal. I'm not an attorney. But having looked at this from a journalist perspective, the only thing that we can do is say no to MERS mortgages. Just say, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to sign any mortgage paperwork if MERS is involved.
So anybody that's going to buy a house, anyone that's going to sell a house,
or refi,
or that already has a house with a mortgage, you need to get the book Clouded Titles at InfoWarsShop.com and read it. It's amazing. Now, continuing here, what are some of the other, well, first off, here's the toll-free number. If you have a horror story, if you have a question that he can generally speak to, because even when I have lawyers on, they're not going to speak to your case because they don't know the particulars. So we can't give legal advice, but just general comments or what you would do if you have horror stories or stories in your family or questions or comments or success stories. We'd love to hear from you. The toll-free number to join us is 800-259-9231, 800-259-9231. This is a big deal. It affects our whole economy. Clouded Titles, Dave Krieger, and the book, 800-259-9231. We'll start going to your calls coming up in the next segment. Take about 40 minutes of calls. Continuing, what are some of the other patriot mythology things? Because, I mean, people call me, they send me on air for 17 years, they send me these big stacks of legalese, and if I just announce this and that and file this, and I file magically bond money that's under my Social Security number will be sent to me, and, you know, I hear these talk show hosts, you know, they're going to file $1 billion lien on this or that, and of course, nothing ever really succeeds. But it's almost like magic. It's almost like thinking a Harry Potter book or a Ouija board is real. And again, Larry Becraft is a great lawyer and patriot. He's talked about this. There are real things to fight these crooks, and they are lawless. But again, just because the system's lawless, it still has the establishment mantle to it. And we're breaking through that. But you just don't fight it with whole cloth new theorem.
That's been a big problem, Alex, and when people go into the courthouse and take this system upon themselves and do what, you know, we're hearing about now, another horror story is these administrative processes that people are filing in the land records, and they're filing, you know, they're apparently trying to take something to the international court, and like The Hague is going to, The Hague doesn't care about this stuff. The problem that we're
don't you just? I mean, there are procedures to sue banks when they've lied, or isn't it where they violated the paperwork and violated your rights at the original time of signing? I mean, there's a lot of ways to go after them.
Well, you know, we've seen attorneys do non-disclosure suits because nobody was told that MERS was there at the time and what they were for. People went in and they were so interested in getting the keys, they just signed their life away. You literally could have put in there, borrower agrees to give us his firstborn 1 year after this loan, you know, is in force and effect. And they would just sign.
And a fraudulent contract is null and void.
Well, yeah, but they don't read it, and that's the problem. People do not read and understand what they're signing. They go to the closing table, they want the keys, you know, they've tried like the Dickens to get a loan mod, and why would you do a loan modification with a bank that doesn't even own your note? That's another big problem we're having. But
okay, well, just give us a smattering, because I've had a bunch of these lawyers on before, a smattering of things that are winning in court, things that are, things to, I mean, obviously it's all in the book, but things to look for.
Well, if you see documents filed in the land records, and we see most of the problems having to do with assignments, this is a big problem, because when they finally do come out of the closet, these people on Wall Street that are playing in the derivatives markets, and they record a document in the land records, generally we're seeing that it's 5 or 6 years past the actual date the note should have been conveyed into the pool. And this is a big problem, and the big arguments that are being won now is arguments having to do with whether or not this falls under Uniform Commercial Code at Section 3 or whether it falls under Sections 8 and 9, because Sections 8 and 9, basically, for those unlearned, have to do with non-negotiable instruments. And so when I look at these situations and I see that a note has been taken out of the realm of an Article 3 UCC and put into Article 9 and it's been pandered on Wall Street and sold and resold and the borrower has no idea, then that in of itself creates issues that attorneys are litigating.
Also, they're successful, but I mean, I know you know all the finer details, but elaborate on this point and then the others that you're about to cover. What about where they have lawyers for the banks come in and lie and say that they have all the proof and chain of custody and ownership and all of this, and they're not? I mean, can't you also get them on that?
There have been movements in the states now, specifically New York and Nevada. Nevada came out with AB Assembly Bill 284, which basically says that if you file phony documents in a court case in that state, and it can be shown that these documents are not legitimate, that the attorney could be disbarred and be facing jail time. It's a felony.
But wasn't that already on the books?
It was just...
It's like saying pass laws.
Yeah, last year.
But it's like saying pass a law in Texas, the TSA can't grab your genitals. There's already laws that you can't do that. I mean, there's got to be laws in all the states. I've seen some of them where you get in trouble for filing false documents.
Well, yes,
fraud.
There are
perjury.
Yeah, we have qui tam actions that have been filed all over the country, specifically in California.
Can't somebody do that who's not even a party? That's what that is, right?
Well, yeah, the qui tam basically is a whistleblower action, and they basically go out and say, okay, I declare that I have information, and based on that information, I'm filing a suit that all of these things are false claims. Those in of themselves are legal, but the attorneys I'm talking to that filed these claims years ago are now running into problems with them. And it all falls back on UCC Article 9 as to whether or not these are negotiable instruments under 3 or non-negotiable instruments under 9.
Most of the victories against the bankers, where is it successful?
Agency. The thing we're seeing now is if you can defeat and you can split or separate the relationship between the entities that are filing these documents and the entities that claim to hold the note, if you can split these things, in other words, when the trusts themselves come back in, and if you look in your assignment and you see an assignment that says this note has been assigned to, and there's some gobbledygook all the way through, you know, formerly known as successor by merger 2 as trustee 4, and then you see a number like 2007-HE5 or anything like that, and a combination of numbers. You probably are dealing with a trust that has a pooling and servicing agreement, and this is what these attorneys, like Mark Dan, the former Ohio AG, who's winning a lot of cases in Ohio, and he's going in and he's dissecting the pooling and servicing agreement and running it into court, and the judges, even though they're not focused on securitization per se, New York trust law has a foundation in these securitizations.
Well, I mean, the system has to write this or it will destroy confidence in everything.
Exactly. And people are starting to get a little disgusted with it, especially when they find out stuff.
A little disgusted.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Right now, we have to use a logical head, Alex. We can't go out and do some of the stuff that's going to get you thrown in jail. We've got to be reasonable with this, and we've got to take this thing, and there is a methodology to this, a method to the madness.
Now, what about, and we're going to go to break and come back and take calls, what about the system countering? I know they're trying to get some state laws passed to say mirrors is okay. I know they're trying to get the feds to have an agreement with attorney generals. I know that they're trying to kind of cobble over and paper over this. How is the system countering this? How are they trying to keep the scam going?
Well, the bigger picture is the lack of prosecution. That in of itself, when you don't put the bad boys in jail, the dirty work keeps going on. So, we come back to what we discussed first about Lanny and Eric and all the boys at the DOJ who used to be, basically partners with Covington and Burling, this law firm in D.C. that wrote the opinion letter for MERS. When you look at the bigger picture and you look at this 27-page white paper that was just released by Government Accountability Institute, they actually footnote all of the little causes of action that coulda, shoulda, woulda, but never happened because of the relationship between the DOJ, the SEC, and Covington.
But now, isn't that just the moral authority of the public waking up and juries and things that are involved, and the fact that now it's almost like a public tort warning that now they've been told stop doing this? Does that add any weight to stop them?
It does in certain jurisdictions. We notice that, like New York, for example, a lot of the judges in the 5 boroughs, like Arthur Schack, they won't put up with this stuff, and they know robo-signing when they see it. I virtually, if Arthur Schack would come to work for me, he'd probably be one of the best fraud spotters in the country.
Again, we go to robo-signing. That's been ruled.
It's still going on.
It's been ruled a fraud.
It's still going
on. And Obama's using a robot to sign now.
He has as a matter of fact, a robo-signer on his deed. His mortgage in Illinois.
But he's signing bills with a robot now, too.
He probably has a signing machine. A lot of them do. And they're using signing machines to sign the robo-sign.
Well, no, he'll be in Hawaii and just say, sign that bill. He shouldn't be able to do that.
Well, if it's not in front of a notary, go figure, because notaries require the president.
Yeah, it's all... Look, I know what's going on here.
Sure,
the globalists are clouding all this so they can bring in a new system later they control and just go cashless and get rid of the old county deed systems. I'm telling you, they screw things up, tie all their fraud to everything, make it too big to fail, hold us hostage, and then roll out more tyranny as the solution.
They would like to put us on a national registry, but I think the states aren't buying it. That's the one thing, remember...
Thank God for the founders. It's the separation of powers.
Exactly. And this is a problem when you're dealing with issues where the county land records have been there since time began in this country, and now you have an electronic data...
It's one of the few things that works great in government, because it's ancient.
Exactly.
It's been figured out.
Exactly. And so when you have a system that comes in and runs totally juxtaposed to what we know to be true and factual.
Yeah, we'll take our 1,000-year-old system. We don't want your little fancy dandy foreign banker flim-flam, Bernie Madoff, Ken Lace, El Scamo system. We're going to come back with calls straight ahead. Amazing, and I mean amazing interview. Clouded Titles, Dave Krieger. Straight ahead, get it at InfoWarsShop.com. Dave Krieger is our guest. We're taking your phone calls. Big Sis sued for a cadre of women. She only hires women to top positions. Well, she likes women. I like women too. But the point is that the men were told they were slaves, basically. So lawsuits are flying. We ought to make her a Supreme Court justice. It'd be nice. You couldn't tell who was who. Whether it was Sotomayor or Kagan or her. We could just kind of like... I mean, it could be like a game where you kind of spin the 3 around and go, which one is which, and you can't really tell. Maybe we could cross all 3 of them, make a new clone. That'll be our new ruler. You can tell the leader, though, has a little white spot in their hair. Most supervillains do have like kind of that little mark. I don't know what the deal is. Okay, we're taking your phone calls here, talking about the giant fraud. And before you leave, because you started getting into it, but we never got into it, before you leave, get into the Justice Department and our loving Attorney General, because he's a big part of this. Well, being a good fellow from Chicago, we're going to get to it.
I understand. Well, basically the word that's out on the street now through some of the reports that we're seeing, and we review these things on a daily basis, we're looking at issues between the DOJ and Covington and Burling, namely that the Eric Holder, Lanny Brewer were employees or partners, if you will, of Covington and Burling, which issued the opinion letter for MERS and MERS Corp. So when you have the DOJ tied to the entity that the banks basically use to transfer all their notes on Wall Street and play in the derivatives markets, you have some real issues.
Well, no, that's the word. I mean, you get the select groups, the law firms, the accounting firms, Arthur Anderson, and then you can do whatever you want. People ask, well, how can Mitt Romney not pay hardly any taxes? Well, he's part of the special club. And that's how the payoffs work. Let's go to some phone calls. Jim in West Virginia, you're on the air with our guest. Welcome, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, two things utterly amaze me at their insanity. You can make every payment, but you never get the wet copy after you make all the payments of the note. So it still isn't yours. And the banks collect and or foreclose based on a worthless copy of the original valuable note. Now, judges know the difference between a note and its copy. The copy is a forgery, for crying out loud. Just like there's a difference between a Federal Reserve note and a Xerox copy of the currency. Can you comment on this criminal insanity on the part of the judges? And I'll just listen.
Well, the biggest part of the problem that we're seeing now is, when people bring stuff into court, the judges basically buy what evidence has been presented that hasn't been objected to. The bigger problem we're running into is a lot of people that go in there that get out-procedured by the banks, and I think this is where the largest part of what we're seeing is the problem. Not that, pro se litigation hasn't won. We had a case, Reed versus Fannie Mae in California, that just came out where she got a summary judgment. But
to be clear, if no one objects, they could go in there basically with the back of a Cracker Jack box and say, here's my proof.
Yep, bring anything they want. And the court will accept it as long as you don't object to it. This is the general game plan, and a lot of people do not understand when they go into court that you can literally get out-procedured because these people have a specific game plan. We have networks across the country of foreclosure mills that all band together and share information in a big way, and I talk about that in the book. And so when you see all of this information,
it's called organized crime.
Well, you call it what you want, but the fact of the matter is it's network sharing, and this is what we're trying to do on our end. Is we're coming back, and we have a network of about 40 attorneys that have all banded together and share information, and this network is growing. And there are significant players in this thing that are actually winning cases.
No, like you said, former attorney generals of states and people like that. Thank you so much, caller. We're going to go to break and come back with more, as we got to go to break. There's not time to get to a caller right now. But Truth Warrior, Mike, Nathan, and others, we're going to be talking to you. Toll-free number to join us, 800-259-9231. I'm Alex Jones, and you're listening to the GCN Radio Network, GCNlive.com. There's a ton of amazing news, by the way, on the GCNlive.com website. Be sure and check that out. And then, of course, there's also the site where we're streaming video of this right now. If you'd like to watch us, prisonplanet.tv or infowarsnews.com. All right, if you just joined us, we're rolling into the third hour here on this Friday edition. Dave Krieger is our guest. The book is Clouded Titles. We're taking your phone calls. Let's move to them quick. 30 more minutes of calls here, then a bunch of news. And my little visit with a drone today, yeah, it happened. And I got footage of it to prove it. Let's talk to Mike in New Mexico. Mike, you're on the air. Welcome.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, I got a question for you. I don't know about these reverse mortgages. I'm hearing them air a lot on commercials, and it looks like they're attacking a lot of senior citizens. So if you guys can elaborate on that, something to look out for your mom or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question. They're telling old folks, live in your house till you die, but get some money to live now on the house. In a way, maybe that's a good idea because the IRS will try to steal old people's houses unless it's all clouded, but I'm not giving advice. I mean, I'm sure that's probably pretty predatory. What's going on?
Well, reverse mortgages, and we had a question on that on another program that I was on, and the woman basically was concerned about the fact, as you stated, Alex, that she was wondering whether or not this was a smart move for somebody that's getting up in years. And normally, when I think of people going into retirement, I'm thinking of people that are trying to literally pay off their mortgage and find a passive income stream. But because of the fact that America's financial education, well, you obviously didn't learn it in high school. You actually have to, instead of the school of of high school, you learn it in Fort Knox or Hard Knocks, so to speak. You basically learn because you've sacrificed your almighty dollars and have gotten nothing in return. The bigger problem we're having is that the lack of education, lack of financial education in this country has basically allowed the lending community to prey on the interest of these people, and so they get these famous movie stars on that look trusting, and they recommend these things and recommend these.
So you're saying it's a bad idea?
If it was my situation, I was facing retirement, I sure would be looking at another income stream. I could think of a lot of other things to invest in.
Sure, but let's say your cancer's in remission, you think you're going to be dead in 5 years, do the reverse mortgage, go to the Caribbean, have a good time. Part
of the problem is, though, your estate starts to diminish, and pretty soon, by the time all this is said and done, your estate is left with nothing. I mean, that's the...
But, I mean, yeah, if you don't want to give your kids the money, though, blow it. I mean, it sounds bad. I'm not saying reverse mortgages are good. I don't know much about them. I'm just saying, are they always bad in your view?
I generally tend to shy away from them, but, you know, people have the reasons for doing it, and I always tell them, look, if you're going to do a reverse mortgage, the best thing to do is consult with a financial professional. Get your
well, yeah, why not sell the nicer house and move into a smaller apartment in a retirement community instead of getting the reverse mortgage?
My mom did that very thing. She did the very same thing. She took her all the money that she had, she sold her house, and of course, you know, her being in Florida, she took a nosedive on that house and lost $100,000 when she sold it. And so she took that money and put it into annuities and what she considered safe investments and left it there. And so then she moved into an apartment. And that way, you know, when it's time to settle the estate, everything is very easy and not complicated. Now, the average person could have said, you know, the reverse mortgage sounds good because I want to leave something to my kids. Well, the downside of the reverse mortgage is the fact that it depletes the estate. So if the intent was to leave them something, well, don't you think it would be better just to try to figure out a way to create an income stream to pay off the mortgage, or figure out a way to, you know, rent the house out and move into an apartment so somebody else can pay that mortgage? Because that's what a lot of people do when they can't afford the house. They rent it to somebody else, and somebody else makes the mortgage payment, and then they move into an apartment, which is cheaper, that they can live on, and they're fixing.
All right, great analysis. I think that answered his question. We're going to go to break. 2 more segments. The next one's long. We're going to go to Mike, Nathan, Sandy, Truth Warrior. Actually, Truth Warrior is right after Mike when we come back. Again, I'm Alex Jones. Our guest is Dave Krieger. The book is Clouded Titles. It is amazing. What if you were not able legally to sell your home? Over 70 million American homes may be affected. This book breaks it down, available at InfoWarsShop.com at the lowest price you're going to find in the known universe. We'll be right back. Stay with us. I'm Alex Jones. Dave Krieger is our guest for 2 more segments here on this live Friday edition. I'm Alex Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. If you just tuned in, there is a mega fraud. I talked about it a decade ago. People thought it was a conspiracy theory, how they didn't have the real notes. They were engaged in fraud. They were selling into derivatives, these mortgages over and over again. The chain of custody wasn't filed. The deeds weren't filed properly. None of it was being carried out correctly. Well, now, you know, the last 3 or 4 years, that's been big news. It's continuing. And they're not just taking people who get behind on their mortgage. You know, you pay 24 years, you get behind 1 month, they take it to last year. They're taking houses that are paid for. And we've gone over a lot of examples of that. And, or people think their house is paid off, but somebody bought it down the line and just comes and says it's mine. And the courts take it unless you know what you're doing. That's where the book Clouded Titles that we do sell at InfoWarsShop.com, massively discounted. It's normally $49.95. It's $39.95, and you get a free Citizen Rule book and bumper stickers with it. But the point is, it's well worth it, and because it breaks down what real lawyers and others are doing to win. And it's the latest. This just came out, this latest edition. Okay, I want to go back to the phone calls here. Let's go to Mike and then Truth Warrior and others. Mike in Wyoming, you're on the air with Dave Krieger. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Dave, there's another 500-pound gorilla out there that's clouding title. That's the IRS. I was in a urinating contest with him for many years, and I finally had to go through bankruptcy to get him off my back, but I'm still saddled with a big lien on my house that my bankruptcy attorney says I'm stuck with it. There's nothing they can do about it. But what the IRS does is they don't go through the normal procedure that anyone else would have to go through to file a lien with the county recorder. The recorder just says, well, we just file anything as long as the appropriate fee is paid. There's no certification, to be specific.
Is that even a mechanic's lien?
No. They have to certify that the information in there is accurate, and they don't do that. It's robo-signed by someone who doesn't even exist.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with that. And by the way, this is the big scandal. You saw, Dave, this big breaking news, just to add a caveat, and I'm going to get the article out soon. For 3 years, I've been talking to a senior IRS person, and then for over a year or another, but the last few months are like, listen, there's going to be a big thing. We're told to give people fake, well, I mean, they're not fake, but they really are fake, under wrong names, these tax IDs. Then they can then attach those to Social Security numbers that aren't even the same, and government, Texas Comptroller, others have released millions of them. Foreign governments are involved, you name it. It's shutting down the IRS, but it's worse. When the illegals do stuff in your name or whatever, the IRS, and there's this identity fraud involved, will come and still take your account or put liens on you, and they're told it doesn't matter, just use it to take their money. And the IRS is finally in a mutiny. You know, the biggest center in the country is here in Austin. They are finally just going, we can't do this. And they're taking retirees' homes, you name it. I mean, it is. So this breaking news you see is really a whitewash, is what I'm saying. But what do you say to that, Mike?
Well, my question is, isn't there a way? Can I do a quiet title action? I couldn't get any attorney to touch it locally here.
Yeah, how do you challenge the fact that it's a robo-signed fraud?
Well, you know, again, you're dealing, UCC largely in part deals, from my understanding, in Article 9, which is basically possession is 9/10 of the law, and if they can go in and seize whatever's in your bank account. And I know that, judging from what I've talked to attorneys about, Mike, on these issues, that they're telling me that, you know, certain bankruptcy debts are dischargeable, or IRS liens rather, are dischargeable in bankruptcy if they're older than 3 years. My CPA even confirmed that. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that, you know, once liens are there, there are certain procedures that you need to find a real estate attorney that understands this stuff, that can go in.
Yeah, there are people that aren't cowards that are willing to go up against the IRS.
There are attorneys that will go and challenge the existing liens on there, especially if a lien has been discharged in bankruptcy and it still is, you know, showing on your chain.
So what saved you? Your homesteads saved you from their clutches?
Well, it's the bankruptcy itself stops any collection activity, but that doesn't make the lien just go
By the way,
away.
Mike is a doctor, and he hadn't called in a few years. But you've been listening over a decade, haven't you, Mike?
Oh yeah, since the early days.
I recognize your voice. How you doing?
Oh, not too bad. Unfortunately, you know, the old saying that a fish rots from the head down. Our administration here at my little hospital seems to have the same infection that the feds have. That they can just do pretty much whatever they want, and this mentality seems to be permeating our entire society.
Yeah, the more Americans go along to orders, the tyrants will gravitate to the positions. Thomas Jefferson said the level of tyranny you will live under is the exact point you will put up with. And that's the bad prognosis, Doc, as you know. But I tell you, you've been listening, it's got to be 12, 13 years. Has it not all come true like we said? I mean, we're just following the signpost right into hell here. I mean, we're getting pretty close to the mouth of the furnace now.
Yeah, like you, I've known for a long time what was going on. I'm old enough that I thought, well, this is something that the next generation is going to have to deal with, and I never dreamed that, at fast approaching 60 years of age, I'm going to be the one that has to deal with it.
Well, look out, because my IRS source said 70+% of the audits and seizures are doing, they've been told target retirees, and they've changed the laws retroactively to now try to get your money and say, oh, you took $200,000 out the last couple of years out of your retirement. There's penalties and interest. You owe us $1 million. And it's not even a law. It's just total criminality. Good to hear from you. Any other comments on that?
I'm good there.
Amazing info. Let's talk to Nathan in Minnesota. You're on the air with our guest.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on. I'm actually a friend of Dan Feitz, who's been on your show before.
Yeah, good guy.
I'm an attorney here in Minnesota, and I practice in the area of bankruptcy, and then I've studied this issue. I've had some knowledge and exposure to this. Just a couple things I wanted to say. In Minnesota, the MERS has come and lobbied our legislature and just gotten a MERS statute that just says everything they have done is okay. And they also got a favorable decision on a certified question from the federal court to the Minnesota Supreme Court in the case of Jackson v. MERS that basically says, yeah, everything they do is fine. You can sever the note from the lien. That said, I think people should be really careful about, what attorneys they hire. We just had one here that got sanctioned for a lot of money and who was representing to people that he was going to be able to take care of these things. So be real careful and check into who you hire. And then the other thing I wanted to say that has to go with the IRS, you see the IRS picking on little people all the time. when these things were securitized and they put them in like these REMIC trusts, I've learned this, I've gone to continuing legal educations on this from real legitimate attorneys that have been involved in this, a lot of people from the South. They put them in these REMIC trusts. It's my understanding from these attorneys that the nature of these trusts is such that you're not supposed to transfer these assets around once you've got them in these trusts. So essentially, it appears to be that there's massive tax fraud that has been perpetrated by these banks and maybe Goldman Sachs or whoever has been churning these things out. I actually got to talk to a retired partner in Goldman Sachs at a bar, kind of a friend of an uncle, who basically he designed these things, and he basically acknowledged to me off the record it's just a big fraud that they would have them certified AAA and spin them off. And so I think that there's massive. You see our little, our doctors, that's an upper middle class person, but I see people, truck drivers and stuff, picked on by the IRS.
Oh, no. They admit they go after little people for no reason because they can't defend themselves. I mean, it not only is the IRS robbing people, folks, you're robbing innocent people and destroying families. Your mojo, whatever you want to call it, your karma, your reap what you sow. I wouldn't want to be you. And I'm not talking about people doing something to you. I'm talking about God. I mean, I've learned one thing, folks. You do wrong, it comes back on you many-fold. I notice, Dave, that you're sitting there pretty excited to say something you know about these cases. Thank you for the call, sir.
Well, I have one question.
Stay there.
Yeah, I have one question I want to ask Nathan if you're still in the...
He already dropped, sorry.
I'm trying to find out how much luck these bankruptcy attorneys are having doing adversarial proceedings inside of Chapter 13, because a lot of people, they try to do a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, and you basically are just discharging and dumping all the debt.
But you were nodding your head when you talked about a lawyer getting sanctioned in Minnesota.
That was a massive case, and he's still getting sanctioned. He basically was doing a lot of blanket filing of the same type of lawsuits trying to stop these foreclosures, and the courts basically just hammered him. Unfortunately, the problem in Minnesota, and this is, there are several states that are really seriously in trouble. Michigan is one, Minnesota's one. They've given MERS a lot of latitude. Arizona, with the Cervantes case and the multi-district litigation, has given MERS a huge...
So the courts are backing the fraud.
A lot of what we're seeing is that the courts are siding with MERS in that... and this is part of the problem is the borrower. The borrower went in ignorantly and signed his name to a deed of trust or mortgage and gave MERS...
But a fraudulent... I'm no lawyer, but I know in all law, ancient and the more newer forms... something designed to deceive and to be a fraud is a null and void contract.
If it can be proven. The thing I have to ask the borrower when they go to the closing table, like yourself, when you went out and got a mortgage loan, did you read before you signed?
Yes, but it's written in legalese, basically in a foreign language.
I understand. Did they tell you that you could get an attorney at the time that you signed this document? No. Yeah. See, the thing is that Americans, because of this lack of financial education I was referring to earlier in the show, because of the fact that they...
No, we've been raised to be victims and to be cattle. That's why the big banking associations 100 years ago or more said we've got to finance the dumbing down.
Yeah, well, you have to look at, when you go in to sign a mortgage loan, if anything, if you know somebody that's going to be buying a house at any point in time in the near future, you need to sit down, if you know about this book, and you need to share it with them and tell them, look, if you go in and you see an 18-digit MIN number, it means that they intended to securitize your loan. That MIN number was on your document before you went to closing. They already had that note and that pool and everything.
No, they already get it agreed to get you the loan. Now, and they shop it around. That's how they get it. But to expand on that, you're saying more and more, you can go to title companies and others themselves. You can do an original old-fashioned system. You've just got to ask for it, right?
There are good banks out there that will hold the paper, and that's the way it used to be.
So, and the book breaks it all down. Clouded Titles, available right now at InfoWarsShop.com or link through at Infowars.com. Get it. Knowledge is power. This is a weapon against the globalist. Well, I was going to Truth Warrior, who I saw on hold earlier in the week. I never got to it, and I was about to go to him, and he hung up. So let's go to Sandy in Florida. You're on the air with the author of Clouded Titles, Dave Krieger. Go ahead.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good, ma'am. Do you have a question or comment?
Kind of a question and a comment. Well, actually, I was helping a friend of mine who's been facing foreclosure. She's been fighting successfully through an attorney, but then they dropped her because the banks wanted to do a modification, and she didn't. So we went pro se because we couldn't find any attorneys to help us. One actually said, you know what happens when people come against the system? They get killed. So we went and we showed the judge that the assignment of mortgage was done 2 months after they had already first filed for foreclosure. So when she talked to the attorney said, oh, that we took care of that before. And she said, no, there's nothing in here about that. And then she said, you have the original? He said, no. Finally, she looked at him and she goes, you got a serious problem here. And she says, but I'm not dismissing the case. And she looked at my friend. She goes, because I'm not going to give you a place for free. So they stopped it. They didn't give them the summary judgment. So listening to you, I've written down some notes. She did get an attorney because when my friend said to the judge, we feel there's fraud involved in the actual...
Sure, we're not going to be able to break down the whole case here today, ma'am, or give you, things that are going to win. You need to get the book or do further research. But do you have a question for our guest?
Well, yeah, the question is that they want to do mediation. Should we bring up... They're supposed to have a title expert. So if he's there, should we bring up the whole thing about what you were mentioning about the...
Well, ma'am, we can't sit here and give you advice over the air and know the particulars, but I appreciate your call. But I'm sure you hear this all day, Dave.
I do a lot. And, basically the way things are, if I was in that position, Alex, I would be, looking at the attorney and I'd be saying, okay, what's wrong with the logistics here and why aren't we arguing these things? I mean, he needs to speak up. My biggest concern, because she was sitting there talking about a loan mod, if you've got a document or an assignment that is questionable, and it's questionable, then the question then becomes, or the issue becomes, why am I negotiating and doing a loan mod with a lender that may not own my note? Yeah,
but that shows you've already gotten pretty far that now they're trying to...
Well, see, the problem with loan mods is it drives the borrower because it takes a long time to get a loan mod done, and the whole time that this is happening, the borrower is either making trial payments or not making payments at all. And they're getting deeper in debt, and there's more servicing fees being added on by the servicer, and so as an end result, it costs more to dig out of the snowdrift, once everything is all piled up around you. So, this is why we go back to the core and look at chain of title versus chain of custody of the note.
Exactly. They're trying to change the subject. Let's go to Bob in Florida. Bob, you're on the air.
Hi, how you doing?
Good.
Listen, it's funny that you guys are bringing this up today. I had a piece of property that was sold yesterday, and I got a phone call from the title company, and here the notary at the county level never had a witness when she notarized it. Now she's a county employee, never had it witnessed, and here the title company will now or will not allow the sale to go through, and I was told I have to go get an attorney.
Well, that's one of the good things now. They're starting to make them not do all the robo behavior. Go ahead.
No, that's a valid argument and a valid reason to go get counsel because of the fact that, somebody might be subtly sending you a message that you might have an out here. You might be able to vacate the entire judgment and sale because of the fact of the way the case was done. And that's, when you're seeing any little thing that's wrong, including not having a notary witness or any number of little factors that creep into this situation.
Yeah, what's happening is you've got moral people who thought that the IRS and other places were legitimate. Now they're finding out it's all a fraud. Got people at the county level, they're not allowed to come out and speak out against it because of the tyranny, but they will sit there and give you tips. They will, explain things to you.
Well, they can't give legal advice either, Alex, but they can drop subtle hints, and that's apparently what this gentleman has happened to him. And so if somebody says, I really think you need to get an attorney because I see a problem here, they're basically speaking off the cuff to you, but what they're doing is they're dropping a subtle hint that you may have a case. And, you always have to entertain that. You can't, for you to sit there and do nothing diminishes your chances exponentially.
And the more of us fight them just by sheer numbers, it's gonna drive this out in the open. Great call, sir. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, the only other question is, do you have any recourse, because now I have to get an attorney to deal with something that the county was supposed to do.
Okay, real fast. We're almost out of time. Sure.
Okay,
you'll find out more in the book, Clouded Titles, Infowarsshop.com. It's a complex issue. You're putting on seminars breaking this down.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're doing a CODA workshop in Chicago on the 18th and 19th of this month. And you can go online to cloudedtitles.com and sign up. I can count on my hand the number of seats I have left available in that Chicago workshop, many of which, by the way, are your Infowars viewers. So.
All right, Dave Krieger, great job. Thank you for coming in. Coming up, the video's encoding. It's almost done right now. I got buzzed by a drone today. I'm not joking. We got the footage. Yeah, you know why we played this song today? Because I remember an Associated Press article 7-8 years ago saying banks do favors for illegal immigrants. And it had different bank heads saying, oh, yeah, you don't even have to have ID if you're an illegal. We'll just give you a home loan, whatever else. But citizens, you have to show 4 or 5 forms of ID. And now the federal government issues illegals fake tax ID numbers. The states accept their driver's license, not because they care about these people, but because they want to drive down wages and they want to play us off against each other and they want to make everybody poor. Because that's how economies work. When you bring in giant, unskilled, massive workforces, it drags down the base wage. And this all gets into basic economic theorem, but the point is the system knows exactly what it is doing. And then the citizens get the book thrown at them because being a citizen, I mean, I've thought about before, of course, I would be prosecuted because I'm seen as a mark because I'm an American. If you're Hispanic, black, white, Asian, if you're a citizen, you're seen as a chump. So if I announced that my name was Juan Gonzalez and started just drunk driving and I wouldn't get a $10 fine. I'd get, they'd find out who I was and try to put me through the system. But I've talked to assistant prosecutors here in Austin. They've come to my office with their business cards. I've seen them on TV and said, well, I can't come on air, but here's the places to look. Problem is I'm so overwhelmed, I don't have time to get into all this most of the time. And they were going, yeah, what you talk about, $10, $20, $30 fines for drunk driving, you name it, when the police arrest them. I've had cops tell me this. One night, one of my IT guys' driver's license was expired. I pulled up at the office like 8 o'clock at night. I've told the story 20, 30 times. And I see one of my IT guys, well, a contractor, in handcuffs. And he turned into the office. They thought that was suspicious. They came over, ran stuff. His license was expired. And I said, can't you just give him a ticket for that? Can't you just... And they're like, well, we're encouraged sometimes. It was still suspicious. And by the way, we went in your building. We thought it was suspicious he went in the building. And I was like, you thought it was suspicious he went in the building? Because, oh yeah, it was an excuse to go. Cops ran around inside my office. They thought he was suspicious. Yeah, he looks real suspicious wearing a button-up, clean shirt, 6'2", looks like a Sunday school teacher. He looks really evil. And I forgot that part. So they handcuffed him. The door was left open, so they ran around inside the office. They thought he was running away. He pulled in, we're right off the road, came in, cops pull up. He calls me, he goes, there's all these cops out here. What do I do? And I said, well, I guess go talk to him. He comes out, they put him in handcuffs, go in the building, and I was asking him. The cops and the police officer, the head guy's like, oh, Alex Jones, we're listeners. And I'm sitting there with like 4 cops, and I'm going, okay. A couple were leaving, so it was 4, but others had already left. Oh, yeah, I like your show. I'm in a rock and roll band. I retire in 6 months. Boy, the cops are rude in New York. I was up there and asked for directions. They got in my face. Yeah, hey, we're taking your guy to jail. I was like, why? And she goes, well, she was the first to be here, and so that's what she wants to do. I guess he didn't look like he enjoyed having him come to the door and stuff. So, and I went and I said, but if he was an illegal, you'd let him go. And he goes, yeah, probably, even if he was drunk driving, because the judges, they just let him go, and it's kind of frowned upon for us to even arrest him. And all the cops are sitting there nodding their head, and I'm trying to talk to the woman cop, and I'm like, come on, let him go. Be reasonable. And she looked mad. She wouldn't talk to me. So I just said, oh, that's great. She drives off with him, and the other cops are like, hey, I like this on the show. And it was like it was like they were being friendly and nice and were listeners, but we're so used to selectively enforcing and abusing citizens that it didn't even connect with them what they were doing. It didn't even connect with them what they were doing. The illegal aliens in most states, you can look this up, get better in-state tuition than people that even live in the state. They get their babies paid for when they have babies, everything. And again, it's wrong. It's wrong. You can't go to Mexico and be treated like that. You can't be an illegal alien in China and be treated like that. Folks, you know what they do to an illegal alien in Mexico? Look it up. In fact, you can pull up headlines. Mexico, most abusive to immigrants, illegal immigrants. In fact, type it in, guys. New York Times, you name it. They put you in a hard labor work camp with mosquitoes, snakes, you name it, with big fences around it, busting rocks for gravel, the old-fashioned deal, for 1 year. And do you know what happens while you're in the slave camp? They run your ID and extort your family. Because if you don't send them money, they will let you starve and will kill you. Mexico runs real live concentration camps. In fact, I saw a number of thousands of Guatemalans a year that try to get into Mexico to get to the U.S. end up dying in the slave camps. In fact, I'll type it in. Watch this. Mexico abuses illegal immigrants. There's WSBT. Mexico officials accused of abusing illegal immigrants. Hypocrisy, Mexico's immigration stance. Report alleges, and it just goes on. But there's a bunch of them. You can find it. Illegal immigrants really are abused in Mexico. And I mean, let me tell you, folks, you talk about hellish. But my whole point is, can I come to Mexico and just get on a bunch of welfare and have one house in Austin? Because my whistleblower was saying it was 500,000 or something a year. It was 89 million to 10 houses in Austin. Just where I live, 89 million. We showed you that out of Accounting Business Times yesterday. Okay, now for our top story here today. This happened when I was driving to work. And it was about 10 a.m., and I'm driving down 290. And I could tell they must have a checkpoint up ahead, or a wreck. They like to do checkpoints at the Y for the commercial vehicles, the trucks. But they shut down the road a lot. So I have to leave, really early now. Used to take me 30 minutes to get to work. Now it could take over an hour because of the checkpoints, and the Austin police are now wearing Marine Corps drill sergeant hats. I hadn't seen that yet. And they were out there. But so I'm seeing pretty heavy traffic, and I'm dreading it, going, man, I left, an hour and 20 minutes before the show because I get ready at home. I thought, man, I've got to find another route to work through the checkpoint. Because it's not a major highway. They just do it where these roads come together in just in the middle of the worst snarl in Austin, the Y. So I'm sitting there, and I look up, and I go, is that a bird? Is that a plane? No, that's a drone. And right over the highway at about 125, 150 feet or so is a drone moving back and forth. And I look over, and I see what looks like a Texas Department of Transportation truck. And I see a guy with a hard hat sitting there running it. And I pull off. And you're about to see that video. And I get out and talk to the guy. And I interviewed him for about 20 minutes. We'll probably air most of the interview on the Nightly News tonight, but this is some excerpts of it where we have some of the better audio because I shot it on an iPhone. A lot of it's not that good for radio. And, the guy knew who I was, and then listeners started stopping and honking and getting out and taking photos. And then he was like, hey, it's not bad that I have a drone. I'm like, look, it's okay for maps of the highway, with your video/still camera flying around. But I said, no, but we're asking about weaponized drones. He said, oh, that's a conspiracy. And he was a really nice guy. But we've put together the video with articles for him. And he said there's, I think, 4 or 5 of these just with their company operating in Austin. But, I thought we might even hire the guy for the shooting show sometime to come out and show us when we're shooting with the drone. It's a Camera Wings low-level aerial video photography. Robert Jones, I believe is how you pronounce it, owner and flight operations officer. And he's got 4 people working for him that also do it. And he was flying over the highway for a text dot deal. But my point was, when I got out and said, oh, this is interesting, by the way, I don't want weaponized ones, he was like, that's not happening. Even though we have articles here in Texas where the cops are trying to get authorization from the FAA to put shotguns and tear gas on them. That's in CBS News. That's in Houston Chronicle. So we're going to show you some of those articles over the video. If you're a radio listener, we're going to air this on the Nightly News tonight, and we'll also have it posted by tonight or tomorrow on YouTube, maybe even quicker. I think Kurt Nimmo's going to do an article this afternoon for Infowars.com. So if you hear this in rebroadcast later, go to Infowars.com. You can watch the video there on the site. Alex Jones, buzzed by drone. Or Alex Jones catches Highway Department drone in action, something like that. Here it is. But I mean, he was kind of like, and I'm like, hey, buddy, it's news gathering. We're out here on the street. I'm going to air this. So he got a little bit nicer, and we've cut out some of our arguments. I may air some of those later. But the point is he's, well, I'm a patriot. Well, I know what's going on. Well, I mean, I know they're trying to, do this and that, but still, my drone's okay. This is line of sight. And I'm like, yeah, I understand. Your drone's not bad, but Janet Napolitano is announcing that they're going to use them for, quote, public safety and the police, and now they're arming them. So we're having a debate about this. And you need to have the drone industry, the subgroups, point out they're not with the weaponized angle. I mean, I went and saw Total Recall last night. I think I'm going to shoot a review for the Nightly News tonight. I meant to see this is written on Alamo Draft House order slips. You can order food there. Wrote these in the dark, so it's hard to read. But it was an amazing film. I went and saw Total Recall. The government stages terror attacks in it to take the liberties. There's underground bases. Everybody else lives on the surface because the government's released a chemical weapon previously to take over. A global corporation runs things. There's two global corporations that fight with each other. Britain is the command center of it all. I'll do my review tonight. Let's go ahead and get to this piece. Alex Jones, yours truly, running smack dab into a pretty sophisticated little drone. And then, of course, the checkpoint on down the road with cops bugging their eyes out at me when I rolled by through the traffic slow, wearing their drill sergeant hats. I didn't know I ever joined the Marine Corps, but I'm a milk cow. Milk me, milk me. But again, I shouldn't be upset about the drones. It's a good thing, and the TSA too. They're good people. You know, again, we have to recognize that this is out of control. But here's the proliferation. So many drones that now you can't even miss them. Here it is. Folks, Alex Jones here. I was driving to work, and saw the drone. Hey, how's it going? Driving to work here, saw this flying over the road. I had Joe Farah ask me if I'd ever seen one run by government, and I hadn't. But there it is. I'm shooting this with my iPhone out here. Footage of the drone coming in for a landing. Pretty darn powerful footage. Man, that iPhone really did a great job. Wow, what's that?
I'm doing some right-of-way shots for the highway department.
Oh, highway department. Proliferation of drones, huh? Yeah, have you seen our video, drones shot down over Texas?
Yeah.
Pretty good. Check it out.
I know that there was a situation over in Mississippi or Alabama where some guys were overflying a pigeon chute, like PETA people.
Oh, yeah, and it got shot down, yeah.
But
No, that was great. That was the first one. Drone shoot down, but we did one with our gun show just to simulate it.
I'm actually on a contract today for a company, and we're shooting low-level obliques for the 290 right-of-way. Actually, I'm covering all the way from Loop 1 all the way out both legs of the Y. And
what is that, to look at the toll roads, or?
They don't fill me in on what the project is. I get a big old map, and they just tell me where they want photos taken.
Wow.
So I'm actually shooting from this location right now, and this map's about 20 feet long.
What do you think about in the news that Texas is weaponizing drones to have them flying around with shotguns and riot control?
Well, I stay on top of it, and I am not aware that that's occurring at all.
Check it out. It just started happening the last month.
Yeah.
Did you hear about them using a Predator drone against people that had a cattle dispute in North Dakota?
Doesn't surprise me that they may have gone over and taken pictures.
Do you think it's good to have the Department of Defense operating in domestically?
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, to me, it's no different than standing on the side of the road taking a picture. I'm just a little bit higher.
But you know, these can shoot over fences, though, privacy fences.
Well, but, I mean, every day Google is flying over those fences, and you can zoom in. I can look at the chairs around my swimming pool.
No, I know, but Google also got caught using those little cars to grab people's passcodes.
Oh, that's pretty crazy. Yeah.
So you can program this to kind of fly itself, but then you can just override it?
Well, you know, as you see it set up right now, it doesn't have autonomous flight capabilities other than if it runs low on battery, it will automatically return before it gets in trouble.
So there's an override.
Right, and it also has a, if the radio were for some reason to break, it'll automatically come home and land itself where it took off from. So.
And this camera shoots video and stills?
Yes, this is probably the high end of what people use for this business.
Yeah, I've got 2 of those cameras. They're awesome.
Yeah, Sony Next 5.
They've got high def quality that just 10 years ago that would have cost 60 grand.
And yeah, I mean, I know that they're using it to defend the borders, and we have multiple predators along the U.S. border.
A whole bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, there's not a whole bunch. We just got, we had 2, and I think they're pushing for 5 right now.
Yeah, but I mean, the Air Force, has over 15,000 of them, and they're using them all over the world.
Yeah, but we were talking for the
Sure.
USA,
Sure.
The Homeland Defense doesn't have a lot of them, and they're flying the U.S. border, but they're not looking over your back fence or anything. So,
well, actually, I mean, we got footage in Florida where they are. I mean, they say police on them.
Yeah. And well, police are held to a higher level. Fully autonomous drones where they can send them out to a spot, and you know, that's a different thing where the guy isn't seeing it. He's got a
sure,
camera,
pre-programmed.
Or he's flying it by camera where he's looking into an image and flying it first-person view. But you know, the guys that are flying low-level, under-regulated airspace, you know, I'm flying 400 feet or less. Regulated airspace starts at around 500.
Sure, listen, you're out here getting shots from the highway department. That's understandable. That's a great profession, really neat. I'm glad we ran into each other. I'm talking about police departments are saying we're getting them and we want to weaponize them.
Well, see, I actually know guys in the police departments, and what they would like to do is, you know, before they serve a warrant, is fly around the house and look at exits and stuff like that. You know, things like...
Couldn't Google Earth do that?
Well, yeah, if you could get them to fly over this afternoon.
Well, that's the thing, though.
Yeah.
Google looks straight down. These can come in and look.
At obliques, yeah.
Yeah, that's I'm telling you, that's the Big Brother aspect. Look at all the surveillance. Look at the NSA admitting it's spying on the American people illegally. Look at all the loss of liberty, all the cameras. I remember talking to the highway department 15 years ago, and they said, we'll never use these for the police. And, of course, they were planning it the whole time. It's a night, but, I mean, who's watching the government?
Yeah. Well, I hope there are concerned citizens watching the government.
He said a lot more as well there with us in the interview, but that's cut down for time. And he talked about a really expensive drone helicopter the Texas department had that did just crash. I think I'm going to have Jacobson add that to the video before we post it up to Infowars.com for everybody. But if you're a radio listener, it's pretty darn powerful footage I got where it's flying around above us on the highway and then coming down and landing. And again, because of computers, because of production, because of miniaturization, this stuff's getting cheaper and cheaper. It is being weaponized. And that's basically what the whole Total Recall movie is about, is where this global corporation wants to kill the rest of humanity so a tiny group can just have robots run everything. Humans aren't needed anymore. And I brought up Why the Future Doesn't Need Us to this guy. And he was laughing. We should probably add that and then show the article where Bill Joy said, yeah, I had meetings with the globalists. You know, they had a Sun Microsystem, and they want to get rid of everybody. I mean, that's the plan with all this. There's not going to be humans going to space. There's not going to be humans in submarines, humans on ships, humans in aircraft. It's all going to be robot. And it's cheaper, quicker, faster, all of it. People worry about unions taking your job or vice versa, non-union. How about machines? And it's not that I'm against technology, it's that the globalists controlling it are building back doors into all of it, and no one can deny this stuff is being used to attack us. And people that are in these industries are immediately, you know, overly defensive, because I didn't put a lot of the arguments and stuff in there. I may put out a longer version, where the guy's like, well, don't say drones are bad. They're not bad. My drone's not bad. It does a good job. It's cheaper than helicopters. And humans won't get hurt. Well, yeah, then there's that nanny state idea of, let's not have humans in helicopters because they might get hurt. And he's not saying that, but that's where this goes. They've already got Google cars all over the United States. They're saying, oh, they're already safer than humans. We should get rid of humans. This is the globalist plan. I know what I'm talking about. We cover it all in Endgame Blueprint for Global Enslavement that they're trying to take off YouTube right now with some band claiming they own my voice now. And by the way, I nicely talked about this on air a few weeks ago, and they haven't taken the attempted block off yet. I'm going to have to take action very soon. Somebody needs to get a hold of those folks. If you go to one of the end games with, I don't know, like 2.5 million views on YouTube, but you can see where they were claiming they own it and they own my voice and they've got their stuff up for sale there, hijacking my video. I'm getting really angry about that. This is what they can do to censor us as well. Just say my voice is copyright and have computers remove it worldwide. That's the type of dangerous systems that are out there. And I said to this nice fella, again, he was like, are you a member of the NRA? Okay, good, I am. He thought because I didn't want the military operating domestically. I could do a whole piece just analyzing this guy as a good guy who doesn't understand. He's like, you're talking bad about the military running drones? Are you with the, do you like the NRA? You know, as a litmus test. And I said, yeah. I've been to urban warfare drills where the military is trying to take our guns. And he's like, oh, I know that. I believe that. I'm like, but then you think I'm a hippie because I don't want armed drones flying around that are autonomous. And I was telling him about autonomous drones. He didn't believe that. In LA Times, Navy launches autonomous helicopters and drones, pre-programmed to go out and kill. They've had them for 10 years. They're just now telling you about autonomous ones. They've got autonomous robot-driven space planes, according to the first head of Star Wars program, physicist and Air Force Colonel Dr. Bob Bowman. He can only say because they accidentally declassified part of it. So I really pressed him at that big convention we had in L.A. back in 2006. And he said, all right, I'll tell you this. He goes, by 79, because this leaked when another, head of another program at DARPA on C-SPAN debating me admitted it, that in the late 70s, we had a fleet of space planes with DU, Shabo, basically meteor gun technology, orbiting the globe as decapitation weapons. They can knock out bases 3 miles under a mountain. You can't dig really 3 miles down of its sea level because it gets too hot. That's why they put bases under mountains, because you're technically miles under rock, but it's above sea level still for flooding and things in caves, and the temperature differential. You're more at about 67 degrees. That's a side issue. Getting off into underground base, deep underground base theorem. I'm going to just stop right there. We're going to have a big Infowars Nightly News tonight. I'm going to review Total Recall. Speaking of Total Information Awareness Network, brainwashing underground bases. Don't forget to support the Infowar however you can by spreading the word. Also purchasing super high quality products discounted at InfoWarsTeam.com, where we have the new, well, I'm on the packaging, I'm endorsing it, the new Supercharged Pollen Burst Plus, the best energy drink I've ever had, and it's really great for you as well. That's available at InfoWarsTeam.com. You can also become a distributor. And don't forget InfoWarsShop.com to get clouded titles. We're not like George Soros that gets banker bailout money or taxes and then uses it against you. You have to support us if you want to hear us on air.